We are recording and streaming on Friday, October 4th, 2024 at 10:11 a.m. Eastern Time with Mr. Ian Burlingame. And I think I don't what as I do with most guests, you gotta sneak peek into the behind the scenes of Tommy. How do you get guests? Well, I find someone that's done or said something interesting and I say, "Will you come on my show?" Most people ignore it. Some people answer it and most of them say no. But then every once in a while someone stumbles in and we've gotten through 1,600 episodes and 40,000 subscribers, so I figured to a degree it's working. But yeah, I saw you had posted about the Praetorian Guard, which was a term I had heard a million times before, but had just never really looked into it. And then I thought it was fascinating, kind of looking at it as the modern Praetorian Guard, the military industrial intelligence complex, Wall Street. But that's going to be a future episode. Today's episode is really about mafia infiltration and control of the government and how they quote unquote legitimize it, kind of the history of it, and why what we're seeing now is simply yet another iteration of a tale as old as time. But for everybody listening, your YouTube is in the description, your Twitter's in the description. Mr. Ian, please introduce yourself, sir, and take it away.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. Uh, and in our dialogue over the last couple of days via the digital channels, you're quite knowledgeable on the topic, probably in some of the specifics way more than I am. But understanding what's happening, I've been open source intelligence, and I was an Intel guy and in direct action, and I'm trying to figure it out. But quick bio,
Yeah.
uh, was in the Army in the 80s, left, tried to be a writer for a while, hadn't lived enough life, went into tech back home in San Francisco, and went into tech in the 90s, 2000s, went into tech investing and investment banking as an analyst for technology companies and infrastructure companies, mostly in China, or in and out of China, but mostly in China. Went into special forces in the late 2000s, in my early 40s, trying to figure out the discrepancy between the reports we were getting and what we were finding in financial data and investment data, because that didn't match up. That meant that somewhere there was some pretty serious lunacy or deception going on in
Fuckery.
government report. Yeah, well, yeah, turned out to be fuckery, such as why were certain people getting rolled up and certain fortunes were being changed hands in the algorithmic trading world, and why those things would coincide with one another. Um, and then I did my doctoral studies in computational engineering, trying to understand where we are with AI. Is AI going to save the world, and is it going to change everything? And honest answer is no, not even remotely.
Nothing ever will.
Uh, it'll give us the illusion of it, but it ain't going to do it, at least not yet, not for some time. And then some brain injuries I incurred when I was, physical brain injuries that I incurred while I was on duty caught up with me and finally got diagnosed. And I spent the last 5 years recovering and rebuilding myself and my life, and really digging into traumatic brain injury, post-traumatic stress. I didn't have the PTSD, but I was at a place where I could barely speak, literally, balance issues, all of that. So that's what I've been doing. And now I deal with brain injuries and with the National Foundation for Integrative Medicine. I do research there. Mostly I collate other people's research because there's a lot of great stuff been done in science and medicine and engineering over the last 20 years that nobody knows about because it doesn't fit somebody's,
Yeah.
it doesn't it doesn't fit the Praetorian and the Mafia's agenda. So it
No.
doesn't get out to the public.
No, I haven't had a traumatic brain injury. I was hanging out with one of my buddies, Don, who was an artilleryman in Afghanistan, and Dale, who was in Delta Force. And I was, of course, as all good stories do, it started with a belt-fed machine gun and alcohol and ended with me in the hospital having a concussion. But my uncle was at Duke Medical School in the 80s, got in a car crash and had half of his brain crushed. He was the first ever successful survivor of a hemicraniectomy at Dartmouth in
Mm,
early 80s. And I mean, it's been 40, he's still suffering from it, but he went back and finished medical school. And when I
yeah.
had gotten accepted into medical school, I remember asking him, like, should I do this? And he was like, if you want to, but just remember they're not that smart. And I was like, why? And he was like, I did it with half a brain, so they really can't be kids. I was like, that's fucking badass. But yeah, no, kind of about I hadn't thought about it until reading your piece this morning about, I mean, I'd always known obviously drug trade, mafia, human trafficking, extortion, whatever, the whole 9 yards, just I don't know, Goodfellas on steroids, and then obviously how they try to legitimize it, and it's easier through cash businesses like I don't know, strip clubs or bars or whatever. And you have to excuse me. I'm in downtown and there's a car honking its horn outside, so just ignore it. But then obviously through other things like real estate and all things I'd, known or figured. But yeah, there's one line in it that I don't even think was the main intention of your thing, but you had said not only to legitimize it in real estate, but also to buy influence in the business world. There's just more influence. And then immediately just clicked where it was like, yeah, no, these guys aren't stupid, wise guys. No, they're doing this, they're buying real estate, they're pushing that for influence. And then all of a sudden I just started extrapolating. Well, what does it look like decades down the road? By influence, by congressmen, by senators. What does that look like as it keeps maturing? You have the acorn and then you have this, the sprout and then the little tree. What happens after 200 years though? Where does it go? Well, I would imagine eventually you buy enough politicians and get enough influence and then enough off the books influence in something like, I don't know, the CIA or DEA or Border Patrol. And then you'd really streamline the crime. You'd be like, dude, fuck this whole like we're selling weed to teenagers. Keep it illegal. We run the border. By keeping it illegal, we can then extort by working with the cartels. And it really is, I mean, in many senses, it's the black hole. It's feeding on itself, and with every additional bite, it gets bigger. But yeah, your thought.
No, absolutely. So, um, to be quite frank, I hadn't really looked at it that directly, even though I may or may not have gone to boarding school with a couple of these kids
Yeah.
when I was young. Um, who were pretty awesome, by the way, to be quite honest. Uh, didn't stay in touch after school days. Um, I didn't really look at the connect, so I went down the Praetorian path, trying to understand because you know, that's a historically powerful thing that was never really repeated. Turns out it was repeated, but it was repeated in the British Empire, which the United States never actually gained its independence from until now, and we're kind of fighting that out now. And how did that lack of independence come about? Well, US banks had to price their debt, their lending in LIBOR, right? The City of
Hmm.
London got to decide, and thereby Europe got to decide the lending rates in the United States and the curve reduction rates and economic cycle rates and all of that in the US. And that finally ended with SOFR, which went into effect, I think, 2017, is now becoming the law of the land, really enacted, I think, fully engaged this month or next month. Um, but things weren't changing even with this transition to SOFR. So then it's a matter of, okay, well, what's really going on? And then, okay, who are the real Praetorians? Because they are amongst us. I got to go serve with them in certain capacities, but those aren't actually Praetorians. Those are the outer elements.
The
And then
muscle,
it's
the muscle
the
influence.
muscle. That's exactly right. And hey, don't pay attention to the Praetorians in the palace because I need you to go look at these guys out there. That's the guys, right?
Mm,
The guys, Zero Dark 30, etc.
yeah.
So then it's America. Well, who are the real Praetorians? And all of this has only happened over the last couple of weeks because this is, I'm thinking through the space of what's coming, right? Because that's what's underneath all of this thought process. And then I realized, well, I've known for decades since I was in investment banking, the real Praetorians are Wall Street guys. They're bankers.
Mm.
They're the they're the ones who pull the strings. They're the ones who decide all of this. You know, they are the influence, period. And then it was a matter of, okay, where do they get their liquidity? Is it money printing? Is it lending? No, going back to prohibition, they've been getting a steady flow of unearned liquidity, meaning liquidity that doesn't have to be printed, doesn't have to be artificially construed, doesn't have to be based off loans that, you have ludicrously high risk rates, right? No, they've been laundering mob money
Crack, fentanyl, human
for a
trafficking.
century, for more than a century.
Yeah.
And this isn't hyperbole, this isn't supposition on my part. I mean,
Yeah.
look at the lawsuits against HSBC and
Yeah.
Bank of America and Wells Fargo and everybody else for laundering money. I mean,
HSBC was doing it for, I think, wasn't it Hezbollah? Didn't that early
yeah,
2010s, wasn't it?
well, people need to understand Hezbollah is one of these organized crime
Of course.
entities. And they're operating from South and Central America. They're all over the world, right? South
Yeah.
Central America, out of Paraguay, mostly on the Brazil border, all the way across up through Nigeria, up through into Africa, up through the Levant. There's a whole reverse crescent there from the Islamic crescent. Um, they are, they are the bankers, the financiers, and logisticians for most of the world's terrorist organizations.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not going to say that not to go down a rabbit hole, and not to give Hezbollah a pass at all, but they also emerged to fill a need that was created. So give me a second. These types of organizations emerge to fill needs that are not being met by the regime.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not just their local regime, but they're, because these are embedded in global infrastructures. So they serve a purpose for the mob. They serve a purpose for the mob state.
In the darkest sense, it is still the invisible hand. It
Still,
is.
it's still money. It's still illicit money.
Mm.
And I'll give you another example that I haven't worked out
Dude,
the
that's all
math of
this
it.
this whole podcast is nothing but me and a guest just blindly walking through trying to map stuff
Yeah.
out. So no,
And I'm grateful for it
yeah,
because
par for the course, man. Go for it.
verbalizing helps me think it out,
Mhm.
right? Um, Give me a second.
The money, the
Why
illicit funds,
why did all of the sanctions on Russia fail? Because Russia under Putin, and why are they so angry with Putin? Because Putin actually removed the mob state in Russia.
mm-hmm.
Now, he didn't do it alone, right? He did it with some other oligarchs and he did it with, the people of Russia, but they removed the mob state that the United States, the United Kingdom put in power under Yeltsin,
Mm-hmm.
take all of Russia's
Glasnost, yeah.
resources, right? So that's why they're so angry with him, because he defeated the mob state. People talk about the China firewall and how China is so oppressive and all this. Well, 90% of what people think about China is pure BS. They've
Yeah.
never been to China. They never spent time in China. Hell, half of them probably don't even know Chinese people, maybe more than that,
Yeah.
right? And sure as hell don't know Chinese history, which is older than any other history on earth,
Mm-hmm.
except maybe even the Persians and the Egyptians, because they don't go back as far as a set people,
Yeah.
right? The Chinese do, and they're still here. The Egyptians, that was broken under the Islamic Abbasids, in terms of historical continuity. But point is that China put up the Great China Firewall to prevent us from and putting a mob state in place in China.
Mm. So of course our propaganda is they're bad.
They're bad, they're
They're not letting us
oppressive, they're
run the table.
abusive. No, no. How do you stop a color revolution in the most populous country in the world that is an up and coming economic peer? Because that's exactly what we do. It's what the Brits have been doing for 300 years. It's
How
what
do you
we do.
how do you stop it?
How do you stop it?
Fucking top down draconian rule. And that is,
Correct.
I don't think either of us are necessarily giving Xi and the Communist Party a pass. No, but I mean, and just kind of broad themes, not getting detaching
Yeah.
emotion, pretending like we're looking
Yeah.
at this
Yeah.
if it's ancient history.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's they are, I mean, second only to us, I would say a surveillance state. And it's now like any top-down control. I would imagine there's no privacy in like NORAD or Mount Weather. I would imagine you go to the bathroom and jerk off, some general knows about it. However, that also means that no one's like slipping in and putting USBs,
Correct.
taking over the nukes. And it's the
Correct.
safety for
Well,
liberty. It's the other end of that.
you got to own the narrative
Hmm.
because how does a mob state work? A mob state works because of narratives, right? It's not just muscle. If it's muscle, it gets wiped. Muscle alone, it gets wiped out.
Hmm. Got to
You
win
got to
hearts and
have narratives,
minds.
and then you got to set up competing narratives that then people tribally come around and then go to war with each other. So how do you stop that? You've got to own the narrative. And you can't do that through draconian, pure draconian oppressive means because the people rise up, throw you down. And oh, by the way, the Chinese have a long history of that,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm thinking because you can't just do force. It
No,
always that works in the short term, but it
yeah,
always ends with the leader and all his buddies decapitated. It
correct,
always ends that way.
correct.
But it also you can't do kumbaya. So I mean, if you take Chinese, I mean, what little I know about it, it's from Michael Pillsbury, the 100-Year Marathon. From what little I know about it, is there's a legitimate feeling of humiliation from the West, and I don't even think it's incorrect. I mean, through the opium, we're mad at them for flooding fentanyl, but it's like, yeah, but yeah,
But that's not the
where,
Chinese.
where do you? Yeah, okay,
But
but yeah,
that's not the Chinese.
but even
We're
let's,
doing that.
yeah, yeah, but even let's just, of course we are DEA, CIA, but in terms of just narrative,
Yeah.
we're mad at them for doing that. It's like, where do you think they learned that?
Oh, yeah, yeah,
We did
yeah,
it to them through the
yeah. How
opium
many
war. So,
tens of millions of their people died because of it? Tens of millions.
so through that
Right. But the,
sense, you
yeah,
can
sorry, go
do
ahead.
it. So no, you're good. I think we have like a 1 second delay. So through
Yeah.
that sense, I think you can. They have the top down control. They have the totalitarian grip. But then there is like a legitimate feeling, and it's based in legitimate history of like humiliation. So in that sense, you don't need the fist for that. You can say like they fucked you. Hey, you see those iPhones? That's why we have Foxconn factories. Like you are their untouchable cast. And yeah, that's you don't need to force that on anyone because it's not wrong.
No. The other thing is the way Chinese work, the Chinese mind. I spent most of my life studying Chinese philosophy and culture and history and lived there and dated some of the women even. Long-haired tutors, as we like to say. Hung Hao. Um, the way the Chinese mind works, so the problem that we're having, and it'll get back to the
Ah,
mob
dude,
state,
don't
right?
what sorry, when I put down a title or a thumbnail,
Yeah.
that's literally a suggestion. We can go down into like we can talk about German Shepherds. I don't give a shit. You don't
I
have to
don't
bring it
know
back.
anything about
You,
German
you don't
Shepherd.
have to bring it back to anywhere. Keep going down the rabbit hole.
Yeah. The Chinese mind works different than the Western mind, right? The Western mind is a revenge mind. It's deep in our culture. And again, this goes back to the mob. It goes back to Rome specifically. In Rome, to censure someone in its broader term than just kill every 10th man, but in the censure revenge, which goes back to the Etruscans before the Romans even, the severity of an insult to a leader, a family, an individual, an entity, etc., was determined to be 3, 5, or 7 layers of insult, which meant kill 3 generations of the family, 5 generations of the family, or 7 generations of the family.
Fuck.
Okay, that is wired deep. And by the way, again, might or might not have gone to school with some of these folks, right? Uh, it's here today. If you want another analog example, look at freaking Victoria Nuland and how many fucking of her own people she's slaughtering in Ukraine, hundreds of thousands to kill several tens of thousands of Russians,
Hmm.
and thinking that that's just right. Why? Well, because under the Soviets, who, by the way, the Russians suffered more under than anybody else in the
Hmm.
world combined, right? 60 million Russians dead.
Hmm. Understand.
And oh, by the way, the leaders of the Soviets were not Russians.
Yeah.
Stalin was a Georgian,
Yeah.
The inner circle were not Russians, right? But that revenge, right? 3, 5, or 7 is deeply, I mean, you can see it in the law, you can see it in everything in Western society. Chinese don't have that because that's expensive. And that's expensive across generations.
Hmm.
And that's not how the Chinese mind works. Chinese mind, now it's not that they don't get revenge, but they don't think of it in that way. The way the Chinese think about revenge is I need to be way more successful than you are.
Which is the best fucking
I
revenge.
need to show, right? No, it's the
It
only
really
real
is.
revenge,
It
right? Is
really is.
no matter what you did to me or what you threw at me, I way outperformed you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you helped me along the way. It's not, yeah.
Right?
It's not
Yeah,
just
exactly.
it's not punching them back. It's fucking I'm gonna be your boss. I'm gonna, I'll pay for your, you're my employee. I pay for your house. Like
Correct.
that's true. Like that's winning.
Correct. Well, that's like in Silicon Valley, where I grew up and spent much of my life. Um, well, I lived in a hippie commune on the border of Canada for a while when I was a kid, but mostly San Francisco. Um, where's I going with that?
Revenge, success.
Success. Oh, yeah. There's a joke in Silicon Valley, right? In tech startups, that nerdy kid you used to bully is now a geek and he runs the billion-dollar company that you're the janitor for,
Yeah. Well, yeah, no,
right?
it is that. It's I mean, the fist or the gun, it has such a short reach.
Yes.
Even historically, you could say like
Yes.
even for us, like let's just again, as a biology major with no military experience, just the most broadest of brushes. It's, after 9/11, we go in, we completely steamroll and collapse and destroy these countries and, Bin Laden, Saddam, and okay, sure. In the short range, in terms of total deaths, well, yeah, yeah, I'm not, a million civilians versus what, 7,500, 10,000 Americans. Okay, but that's even that short reach. It felt like forever, but now it's already in the rearview mirror. And it's like, well, who really want to? I don't know, man. The Afghanis, they won against the Soviets. They just waited it out.
They went against the
They-
British
yeah,
at the
they won
height of
against
the British Empire.
everyone, and they're still there. We
Yeah.
won? Did we? I'm pretty sure they're still the. It's not that they didn't take a loss, but they're still trucking, and in that sense, that's a longer, kind of more deep rooted success, and it's something like China. It's so the very age of the United States is like a chapter in their country,
Oh, it's
like, and it's hard to see that because
yeah.
we live eight
Yeah.
decades on average.
Yeah.
Yeah, Grandpa, no, but no, like there's a much bigger level. And you're right, it is expensive. It's prideful to go after them, 3 generations, 5 generations, 7 generations. It doesn't it doesn't mean don't get revenge and don't stand up for yourself. But there is a cost to the pride, right?
You have to remove a threat, a legitimate threat.
Sure.
And you do have to look out several generations to ensure that threats don't emerge the best you can.
Yeah.
But and it's just dawning on me now, being a British, my mother's Scottish, my father's English, um, both of Scandinavian descent, right? So we didn't get there till 1066 or so. Uh, in that little kerfluffle there at Hastings.
Hastings.
Um, the movie Northman with Skarsgård, uh, basically the original story for Hamlet,
Okay.
right? Where the son is, the king is betrayed by the mother. And it's kind of a mix of Oedipus and Hamlet and
Okay.
etc. Well, not so much Oedipus, um, but it didn't really dawn on me till right now. The whole movie is about revenge, and he destroys himself in the end to get revenge. Well, that's a Viking. That's again, Viking's a verb. So it's not Viking's a verb. Scandinavian is the people,
Sure.
right? There are no such things as Vikings. Um, it's deep in Scandinavian culture also. Revenge,
Mm.
but ruthless, brutal, slaughter, kill them revenge, even if it costs you your life.
Mm.
And since even before 1066, back in the Danelaw and in the British, when Britain, the English were coming together, Mercia and Wessex and Anglia, East Anglia, etc. The Vikings, the Scandinavians were there Viking, and they had the Danelaw. British culture is a mishmash of, I mean, I don't want to say mishmash because that diminishes it, but it's a combination of classical British Isles cultures and civilizations. So some Celtic and Pictic and Britannic, little bit of Roman that's stuck less than people realize. Um, Germanic, Western Germanic, because Eastern Germanic and Western Germanic are different cultural peoples, and Scandinavians. And since 1066, it's been heavy and French, Francia, because of Henry the Fourth, and the Eleanor of Aquitaine. So there's this mix of West Germanic, British, Scandinavian, Frankish, culture that's all mixed there into this thing called British civilization. And really the English, because the English and the Scots were the kind of the heart of that. Down underneath, the Germans, the Franks, so the Franks follow under the Roman patterns and the Roman cultural systems mixed with German. The Germans and the Scandinavians are, ethnically fairly close, but they are distinct peoples and cultures, but they share a lot of similarities.
Mhm.
The Celts, while they're more of they kind of separated into two different groups. One was the stoner group, and one was the alcoholics group. And and there's a funny meme out there, right? Cultures designed
Stoner
by, or
societies, alcoholic
yeah,
societies.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's totally true,
it is
right?
true.
It's
There's
totally, absolutely true.
I saw a third iteration of two, and yeah, it's stoner alcoholics, and then it's meth, and it just shows Werner von Braun in a rocket going to the moon.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay. So there's some good one. That's a good one.
Yeah,
Good
I need to
addition.
find that. I need to find that third
Yeah.
one. Yeah, no, that's the best edition.
But this revenge thing, it's deep in our culture. And in Western culture, in particular British culture, and thereby American culture, because Americans are Brits, just the same as Byzantines were Romans.
Hmm.
They were Greco-Romans, right, from the Hellenistic area of the empire, but they were still Romans. Um, the rest of the, and of course, other nations where our peoples and ancestors come from share the same deep root, right? So where the Romans were more, and thereby the British actually were way more methodical in their revenge. Scandinavians are more direct and blunt. Germans are more direct and blunt. The difference with the Germans, like, what was the name of the Roman uh, general who betrayed the Roman legions in Rome? Not in the Teutoburg, but many, many years later. I can't remember his name. There's a great movie on it, a German movie. I can't remember the name of it, but he was a German. He was taken, a German prince. He was taken when he was just a child of Rome, raised as a Roman, because that's what the Romans did. They made you more Roman than other Romans, and then they loosed you back into the empire, back into your parts of the world. And what did he do? He waited till he was in his 30s or 40s and convinced them all of this time that he was one of them, and then betrayed them and got like one or two legions wiped out,
Oh fuck.
right, in Germany.
All right.
Right. So still revenge, but German revenge is a little cold, right? A dish best served cold,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of saying.
Yeah.
Italians are more, the Latins are more direct and blunt, but they're more, they will wipe you out 3 to 5 to 7 generations, right? They will just spread out and wipe you from the earth, right? That's that old kill everybody and salt the earth behind you or
Hmm.
behind them, right?
Yeah.
Um, Scandinavians tend to be more direct, revenge and violence. Let's get the revenge, but it's more one-on-one, man to man, right? Woman to woman. And don't think this is only a man thing, by the way, because
Yeah.
a lot of that revenge that gets got by women, the
Mm.
sister, the daughter, the wife,
Sure.
right? Ain't
Sure.
just the sons. Um, so that's under, that cultural going for revenge. With a revenge-based culture, what do you wind up with? You wind up with a lot of violence. You wind up with a lot of conflict. You wind up with a lot of unresolved threats internally.
Eye for an eye, everyone blind.
Eye for an eye. And then, so what do? You see the rest of the world that way because you have to survive.
Mm.
And so,
And
why did Christianity maybe take so hard? Because maybe what we were trying to do is remove that,
yeah, yeah, go the opposite way.
right?
Which I
He
mean,
died for our sins. Well, he died for my sins and your sins,
uh-huh.
right? So we don't need to do this constant revenge thing.
Uh,
And what happens when Christianity gets removed? What that thin veneer of civility gets removed.
fucking Holocaust.
You wind up with exactly the
Not
Holodomor.
even the Holocaust, a Holocaust.
Yes, yes.
Huh.
You wind up with, because I suspect very much, and this has been before the Praetorian thought thinking line, and now the mob state thinking line. I've been sensing for about 10 years and little things because nobody's talking it directly, but you could see it with the setup we were doing in Ukraine, that was about revenge. You could see it with what was Operation Maxwell Epstein.
Blackmail.
Maxwell Epstein, yes, of course, there was horrible things that they did with, sex and younger people and et cetera. That was all bad,
Oh
absolutely.
yeah,
But that
unforgivable.
wasn't even remotely what that operation was about.
Well, it was about blackmail for from again my understanding blackmail of people in power, and then you
For
push
what
that
reason, though?
blade into them to make them make decisions that would otherwise be unpopular or against their own interests.
But for what purpose?
To wield the
Not
power,
just to
you know,
control.
to
There
wield the
was,
power and do whatever you want with
there
that
you go.
power, or
Whatever
send
they
in
were
Delta
setting
Force
up,
there.
which I suspect is what we're seeing in Israel right now.
Okay, all right.
That Israel's going to move. And by the way, Hamas is not funded by Iran.
I just want to
Hamas is funded by
probably not.
Qatar.
All right, I was gonna say probably us.
Where is the forward? Where are forward headquarters for the CIA and CENTCOM and SOCCENT?
Yeah,
They're all in Qatar.
Qatar, Yemen, that whole yeah,
Qatar is a tiny little country.
yeah. It's like
Got a
Ireland had
king.
Ireland's like a little, and I'm Irish.
Yeah.
Ireland's like a little shithole where they just have all these like U.S. companies for tax purposes. We kind of do the same thing there. It's kind of like outsourcing black sites. Yeah, but no, we're over there. Don't worry about it. It's not in the U.S. Don't worry about it.
It also means that that tiny little kingdom and that king aren't independent from us.
Of course
There's
not.
nothing that goes on there funding wise and any of that kind of shit that we're not involved in.
Of
There's
course.
no way, right? Because the counter to that is, okay, well, we don't know and we're not all okay. Well, if you're in tiny little Qatar and you have all of this intelligence and all of this special operations capability and surveillance capability in tiny little Qatar, and you don't know that they're funding Hamas and other things, well, then how good are you and what use do we have for you?
It's there's two answers and they're both horrible. It's you're either completely inept and you have all this funding, or you're doing it.
Or you're leading it?
There's no, it's the Mossad's the best. They either suck and let October 7th happen, or they let it or allowed it. We either, either NORAD can see a balloon in Madagascar, or they stood down for 9/11. There's no answer. It's you have $1 trillion.
Right? Or something. or
Yeah.
something even worse, which is we helped set that operation up.
Absolutely. And the only reason we wouldn't have set it up, and I've said this before, isn't because we're the good guys. And this isn't for anyone. This isn't, the turn of like I hate I fucking love this country, but I'm an adult and I look at it for what it is the only reason we wouldn't have set that up is simply for a more believable story. If I want something fucked up, if I want, I don't know, if I want that house over there burned down, I can burn it down, but then it's gonna come back. I can go up to someone else and pay them to burn it down, but eventually it comes back. It's caught on a surveillance tape somewhere. Why was I meeting with that homeless guy? And the threads always come out. Or you would just, I don't know, leave a bunch of Molotov cocktails somewhere. And then if it happened, I wouldn't actually know who did it. If you put me under a lie detector, you
Right.
brought me to Guantanamo and tortured me, I wouldn't actually know. It's not
Correct.
because I didn't do it. It's because I don't know which homeless guy did it. Or if it wasn't a
Correct.
homeless, I have no idea, but I did let it happen.
Or
So
I don't know which other guy in my own
in my thing,
organization
yeah.
did it,
It was
right?
it was ISIS. Maybe if you put the car battery
Yeah,
on me, I might go, okay, I think it was EM. But I mean, if they say had he
yeah,
do it, I don't actually know, and that's for compartmentalization. So
yeah.
the only reason Israel didn't do October 7th, or the only reason we didn't do 9/11 was for like an OPSEC reason. We don't actually want to know where they got the box cutters or where they're staying
Right.
because
So here's the story,
I don't know where I
extraordinary
was going with
thing,
that.
right? We're
Cutters,
still
yeah.
no, we're still on it.
All
Okay.
right.
We're still on it. The extraordinary thing about having revenge-based cultures, and oh, by the way, the Middle East is a revenge-based culture too. Okay. They're a mix of different things, but uh, where do we get the word assassin?
Oh, yeah,
Assassino,
yeah. But yeah, what was
right?
yeah? They had the original like killing like
The
assassin
Hashemites,
group.
I think
Yeah,
was
yeah,
the,
yeah,
the
yeah.
name, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. The thing about having revenge-based culture is you've always got all kinds of people that are trying to get revenge, and they don't need much inducement. They just don't need you to squash them and stop them from doing it.
Hmm. Yeah,
And maybe there's a little bit of something here and there, that
little
you can
guiding.
plausibly
Yeah, yeah.
deny, right? But if they're any good at what they're doing, if getting revenge, I mean, it's just like a SEAL Team 6 or a Delta Force operation. What are you looking for? You're going to do the operation. You might be setting some little things up here and there, but what you're looking for is gaps. You're looking for incompetencies. You're
Hmm.
looking for um, approach vectors. You're constantly looking to figure out, even if they are trying to prevent you from getting your revenge, how do we do it anyways?
Hmm.
So it doesn't take a whole lot. You don't need to, collaborate with them. You just need to know which one's trying to get that kind of, revenge or that kind of an action or to hurt someone in that kind of way. And then you just need to kind of make sure that nobody else sees that and nobody else squashes that before it happens.
Yeah, it's you know it's like the idea of like like why I got banned from YouTube was interviewing all the doctors about the COVID vaccine, the ones who Dr. Malone who holds the patents, whatever. But I always hated that sort of just that room temperature IQ of one of the nurses would have talked. You don't need every fucking nurse and you don't need really you don't even need everyone at the CDC. You really only need like 5 to 10 people. Now with I don't know with biological research, I might get you need some more specialties. You don't need that many people to enact a conspiracy. There's not some idea that they're all not talking. And in the same sense, I mean, you know, what are you saying that we're funding and training terrorists? No, but what you could do is,
But
I don't know, or no, we are doing that too, but
we are.
yeah, yeah, we're doing that too. But it's
Yeah.
yeah, but what you could do is, I don't know, haphazardly bomb them for 2 decades and kill a bunch of dudes. And then you have some guys my age whose dad was blown up when they're 10 and they don't really have any other options and they can't go to school. They've never seen running water. And all of a
Oh, and by
sudden,
the way, I could be part of the reason they don't have those things over
uh-huh.
there. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Well, that too. No, no, it's all. I mean, it's evil as hell, but you have to respect the orchestration of it. It's a perfectly not balanced, but functioning, ecosystem. They don't have any opportunity. They got nothing, and then all of a sudden they will. And why would you even blame them? They got nothing left, and they're gonna take revenge on you because you killed my fucking dad on my birthday. And then all of a sudden we go, oh, and then so now all you got to do is make sure there's, I don't know, a gap in the border, or maybe
or
somebody comes
or
in,
or
or
or we put out intelligence reports that states that they're not a threat as much.
or they're
We've
not
got
a
eyes
threat at
on, we
all.
got eyes, and we got surveillance, and they're not as
They're
much as
not the Taliban. They're the Mujahideen. They're freedom fighters. Damn it.
yeah,
Right
yeah.
until 9/11, and then it's we gotta fucking kill. Which is why, I mean, and I'll put this wager down, and it's October 4th, 2024. I would imagine in the 2040s, we're gonna fucking the United States is gonna have to at all costs stop the Ukrainian Nazi threat for the attacks of, of course they are. He's
Very
Bin
good.
Laden. It's
It's
why
already
why
happening.
would it be different? Exactly.
It's
Why would
already
yeah, the
happening,
Azov are
right?
Nazi. It's all built in already. It's
The
evil as hell,
regime,
but you
the
have to
regime,
respect it.
yeah, the regime is counting on these Ukrainian, auxiliaries to kill Trump,
Uh-huh. Of course.
right?
The Ukrainians did this, so now we got to go in and pummel them.
So part of back to the mob thing, right? So this
Oh,
this
yeah.
is all part of the mob because this is how a mob works. This is how a mob takes over control of a community, a state, a county, a state, a nation, right? The slow, you don't need to be doing, you just have to count on this cultural revenge thing, right? You just got to be able to count on that. You've got to be able, and I wrote the book, The Eternal War. There's really only resentfuls and responsibles, and everybody else in the middle is just kind of bouncing around between the two. You need about 30% to 50% of your population. Well, 30% is default, but you need about 50% of your population to be envious and resentful. There's
Mm,
all kinds of ways to create that across all kinds of dimensions and vectors. They're always looking for to get one up on somebody or get revenge or to get back at somebody. They got resentment. Resentment's malevolence, man. Unchecked resentment, unaddressed resentment is malevolence, and that is evil. It goes to evil quick. That's all you need. And then
mm,
you wind up with all kinds of people who are willing to look the other way or do a little thing or distract or contribute or even participate in
mm,
all kinds of different ways. And you just got to use, you know, coercion, blackmail, or the threat of violence, which you got to carry out sometimes to keep the normies, judges, sheriffs, politicians, the folks aren't driven by resentment, that don't have resentment in them, so they're not willing to go along and they're not looking to get an advantage or harm somebody. It's real easy to sideline them. Right, that's probably another 30% of the population. They're easy to sideline.
carrot stick. Kill them if they step
Carrot
out of
stick,
line. Make sure they get
right?
guys home if they don't.
You distract them or you threaten them. And you don't have to threaten them with murder, just threaten them with the loss of their job and their retirement,
Fuck.
right? The thing is, and this is, as I'm getting into this now, and I'm grateful you reached out because it made me even dig deeper, right?
Sure.
Um, Prohibition destroyed the United States.
Mm,
And whether the United States survives or not, and oh, by the way, it was women who forced prohibition through, and they're weak puppet males. Not blaming this on women, but let's not think that women are innocent. And that was the
yeah.
second part of this mob state thread I'm putting up this morning. Unfortunately, when I had to restart my computer to get this to work, I wiped
You're
that
good.
out, but I got it on paper. But point is, two things coincided together, destroyed Western civilization and the United States. World War One, which destroyed Western civilization, drove us insane, seeing that kind of death and murder, and we lost all of the great houses. Britain lost 47 noble titles. Some of them were 1,000 years old.
I didn't know that.
47 houses gone. never to recover. Those 47 houses that were 1,000 years old were a network of family relationships and obligations that went back 300, 500, 700, 1,000 years,
Kept some level of order.
1,300 years. And they were the check and balance on this type of mob state
Yeah,
because the
like a
people
mesh
belonged to
net. Yeah.
them and they knew how to, they were, barons and dukes and earls and viscounts and counts, and their families had been growing up with their people on their lands for hundreds of years. It's a thing that no politician, no bureaucrat, no elected anybody could ever accomplish.
No, it's an
Ever.
organic, emergent
No
phenomenon.
church could ever do it. This is a very, very, right? These are long, centuries long symbiotic relationships
Well, and
that
it's not that it's no politician, no church, no state. It's just that no centralizing force can do it.
that's exactly
It's the
right.
invisible
That's
hand.
exactly
It's a
right.
bunch of
The
the
kidneys
honor
cannot
and yeah,
regulate the liver. The liver cannot regulate the spleen. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
It's not, and neither can the brain.
yeah.
Um, so World War One destroyed the natural check and balance against a mob state and mob rule.
And in the United States, it set up the I think NDIA, the National Defense Industrialization Act. Wait, this is like early military industrial. I know that because I'm in Portland, Maine. There's an island somewhere nearby, and I went out to it a couple of summers ago, and they're showing all these old different like artillery and shit from like the Civil War. And there's a lot of like gaps that I guess they had been put up. I'm sure I'm getting the story messed up, but there's like gaps in some of them, like they're like missing. And so they were sent over to World War One. And I was like, what? And it was like, well, we are running out of shit. It's like we kind of look at it in hindsight. Yeah, they all have the doughboys have the it was so cobbled together that it led to something where it's like come back and it all has to be uniform. We have to be able to, okay. But you could also say that's the kind of, and even in the wording, the National Defense Industrialization Act or Alliance. Well, what is that? It kind of sounds like the coalescing of military, industrial, and then, like you said about World War One, it also does seem World War One and World War Two they kind of almost seemed like controlled burns to do what?
Correct.
Get rid of the men who were, if they weren't drafted, they were brave enough to be to volunteer, and probably, there's a lot of chaotic death, but you probably have the bravest, most courageous guys dying in valiant ways because that's the genome of the selfless, courageous testosterone. Those are two wars that burned out those characteristics.
So
Throughout history, those characteristics led to the dude having the most kids, and it passed on again and again and again and again, just over thousands of years. The emperors, the kings, he had all the kids. Well, it's because he was a fucking alpha and he got it done. Versus these two wars are the opposite. It's those traits are punished by death, and unless they had kids before they went over the end of that line.
So, World War One was specifically fought to end nobility and
Mm-hmm.
monarchy.
Mm-hmm.
It's because the industrialists were expanding industry, expanding their uh, less the consumer base that came more after World War II, but more the military expenditure base around the world by having all these
Krupp.
conflicts.
You need a good book
And
called The Arms of Krupp.
you need it, and Smedley Butler wrote this back,
Yeah,
in
33, I think.
War's a Racket,
Yeah.
right? Um, the only man to be put in for the Congressional Medal of Honor 4 times, who turned it down twice, right? Turned it down. The only other guy that comes close is Colonel Howard in Special Forces in Vietnam. I think he was put in 4 times as well. So maybe there's two of them. He was put in for two separate incident Congressional Medals of Honor for the same mission.
Fucking hell.
Colonel Howard, just unreal.
One for each testicle.
Unreal. Yeah. But World War One was specifically designed so that the bankers and the industrialists could take over, mercantilists could take over the world, and they needed the labor. They needed the people. They needed the dukes and the nobility's people, and they needed to take them off the land. And on the other side, they wanted the land,
Mm.
right? They wanted the land. Well, they weren't going to be able to, they couldn't buy the land because it'd been in that Duke's family for 700 years. He might sell off little pieces here and there that weren't important, right? So how do you get the land? You kill a Duke.
Mm.
And once the Duke's gone, that landed title is gone. That estate is gone. It's not like, estate laws today. So that was World War One. World War Two,
World War II seemed to coalesce everything into kind of two sides.
World War One. Okay, so World War One did two primary things. It bankrupted the West, literally bankrupted, because if the war had only gone till Christmas, it would have been economically viable, but it went on for 4 more years. And they had to pour more and more and more. So it bankrupted the West, meaning derivatives had to be created, all kinds of sophisticated, complex debt-based instruments. The second part of it is that it created very large, very powerful institutions. And when you have very large, very powerful institutions, which, by the way, from their inception were oriented to war, period. But when you create centralized institutions of immense power, reach, capacity, you now have single points that can be infiltrated.
I was gonna make a point. I really gotta piss. I'll be back in like 30
Yeah.
seconds. And you can tell everyone where to find your Twitter and you. Oh, appreciate you. It's fucking freezing in here. I have all my windows open. What you were saying about single points is it makes me think of I know very little about it, but I'm watching, I think, was it Inside Job or Too Big to Fail? One of the documentaries about '08. I just remember one of the guys explaining it in simplest terms, which was helpful for someone like me who has no education in finance. Was he was like, think of it like a giant, container, like a oil tanker. It's like the oil tankers are made up of a bunch of separate pods or holding tanks so that it can only slosh so much. That's why the whole thing doesn't, you know, like a water bottle, you push it and then it keeps going, it does the weird
Mhm.
stop motion thing. It's because it's all big. Now, if this was like, I don't know, like 200 little honeycombs or something, and each amount of water was just a drop, it would be able to take a hit much more easily. But if I want to have access to all this water right away, I don't do that. So it's in my interest. I'm at the apex of it. I'm the apex predator. I'm the Praetorian guard of that water bottle. I can do whatever I want with it. So we said with the oil tanker was is like all the regulations is like, it's like and there are, too much government is too much. But he's like, it's not purely evil. And there's a lot of regulations that prevented the oil from sloshing around. And the ship is the US and kind of the world economy. But without those, it led to short-term gains, get rid of the regulations. But when something did happen, all it takes now is like one bad, captain. It can fuck over the whole ship. Or, I love skyscrapers. Is the World Trade Center. What was so huge about the World Trade Center was, well, it was a load-bearing facade, meaning you had a concrete core, and then the outsides, which were the steel beams, and it led to the entire inside being free. It's very valuable real estate, 110 floors, two buildings, 220 floors, lower Manhattan. That's a lot of fucking cheddar. But it also means that there are smaller and much more powerful points of failure. So, as these institutions kind of, coalesce and suck everything up, short term is, yeah, they move quickly. There's less red tape. The bad part is what either through just chaotic events or nefarious influence, you can take down everything so much easier. If you have one bullet in a plane, what you can shoot someone next to you, that's one dead. You could shoot out a window, depressurize, you'll kill most of the people in the cabin, but some might put their mask on. Or you can shoot the pilot, and then you're all fucked, and so are people on the ground. That's what happens. And from what you're saying, that kind of sounds like World War One. Is you're getting rid of all these little honeycomb things, and you're kind of now you just have the load bearing facade of the World Trade Center, as opposed to something like the Empire State Building, which is just steel and limestone. So sorry.
No, no, no. So, and very well stated, because that's exactly the case. Now let's go back to where this all began. Where did this mob state actually begin? Was it 1910, 1920, Prohibition era United States? No. It actually started back in the 1600s when parliamentarians and industrialists were just starting to emerge in mostly England on the Thames River, but also in Europe and in certain enclaves on the continent. Industrialists and bankers decided that they were going to take and buy the world, and what was standing in their way? Princes and the relationship of the people with their prince, good, bad, or indifferent. Turns out most of the princes were either good or indifferent. There are very few bad princes. Now, prince might have a bad time because we're all human, but on the whole, you don't have 1,000-year-old family unbroken by not being at least neutral, and for good periods of time, here and there at least, good at what you do, right? And anybody who's led anybody or managed any group of people knows how complicated and difficult that is. So I don't care how good a prince you are, you're still going to run into issues just managing a group of fucktards.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So in the early 1600s, mid 1600s, in Britain, and in on the continent, the Peace of Westphalia was developed, which was the new framework, rules-based framework for Europe. And we had the revolution and the Cromwell period, and then the quote unquote glorious revolution, which was anything but, where we brought a paper king over from the Netherlands, industrialist bankers, and made him the king. Constitutional king with no real power. Right? So like all the Americans are like, oh, King George, King George was a constitutional monarch. He had very little power. You're not looking at the right place.
Okay.
The right place is Parliament. So what happened in the 1600s on the continent of Europe and in out of England, centered out of England, but then Britain, was a concerted effort by parliamentarians, bureaucrats, and politicians and bureaucrats, and industrialists and their bankers to take over the kingdoms. of Europe and the United Kingdom. The United States was formed in that period of time, deeply embroiled in that. So what is the one thing that they had to do going back to the 1600s up through the 1700s into the Napoleonic era? They had to, the industrialists and the bankers, etc., had to convince you that Prince is bad. We don't need no princes. Oh, the fuck you don't. The fuck you don't. They are the only thing that was standing between you and exactly what's happening and what's coming. Historically, in every civilization that's ever been.
It's
And
like
it's not just the princes, right? It's the relationship between a princely family and their people. That relationship and that constant tension at whatever scale, the small scale of a baron, I'm just using the British system because it's what I understand and know,
sure.
right? From the small scale of a knight, and they're all knights, right? They have to be, and they have to earn that, by the way, unlike today, where they're just fucking, they buy it or it's handed out. It's like fucking useless indulgences.
All pedophiles.
You're not a knight. I don't care what, and I don't care who hears this, right? You are not a knight if you can't call men at arms
Yeah.
for war,
It's
right? For violence and war. If you don't have the capacity of that, you're not a knight. So, but that's what happened, right? They had to convince the people, and there was all kinds of thinkers. We don't need princes, and the whole American culture is pretty much based off of that. Well, okay, how well have you done? Right? You are now enslaved in ways that no prince has ever been able to do. Tax and wage slavery is what it was about. Debt, tax, and wage slavery is what they were putting in place in the 1600s. And they needed to get rid of the princes to do it. And that took time because if they had moved openly against the princes, then the princes would have had him killed.
hmm. It's
And
almost
oh, by the way, there was a second piece of that, which is where they kept the princes from going into banking and industry,
that's convenient.
right? By convincing them that that was unchristian and that was unroyal and noble. The only houses that are still alive today are the ones that said fuck that and they went into banking and finance, et cetera. Like the Habsburgs are still here. The Habsburgs are the biggest bankers in Europe. The Percy family in England,
Hmm.
right? They were industrial. They went into industry because the in the north of England. So point is that all of this mob state started to get put in place in the 1600s up through the 1800s and even then into World War One. They had to get rid of kill off the princes. So that's what World War One was about, killing princes and any loyalist, right, to the princes. So they had to kill a lot more. The penultimate center of the tax, wage, and debt slave system was England, the city of London specifically because of the British Empire. And it's only until recently, and maybe still not yet, its lead colony, the United States. What was World War II was fought over? World War II was fought over the British Empire destroying any competition and expanding this, wage debt and tax slave system around the world. Well, they had a problem. And the problem was the Russians and the Soviets
Hmm.
had a different idea. The Chinese had a different idea. The Indians had a different idea. And so we had the Cold War. Those ideas lost. One, the Chinese haven't been communists for quite some time, for at least 30 years. We like to say that it's a trope, but they're not communists. Just look at how they operate. They don't operate communists. They are an imperial system. She is the emperor.
Yeah,
China's been an imperial system for thousands of years. Their Xi is an emperor. Now, unlike other emperors, he had to earn it. He's actually ludicrously capable,
he ain't stupid. He's not stupid.
right? Ludicrously capable, as are the people around him. Um, that's a threat. Soviets are gone. The Russians survived both the Soviets and the attempt on our part to steal all of their resources in the 90s and put a mob state in, right? We did that. We put the mob state in Russia with participation on the part of some, right? Well, Russia recovered. Russia has something like 1/4 of the world's raw materials,
Mm-hmm.
right? It doesn't need to do all this artificial shit. It's a wealthy, ludicrously bottom line wealthy nation. It's the wealthiest on earth, and not by a little, but by a lot. That's why all of our sanctions failed, because Russia's wealth isn't in artificial,
Numbers and strength,
financialization. It's
timber,
in actual,
oil,
if you
ore.
want to put it for all intents and purposes, Russia is still on the gold standard. It's not just gold though; it's tin and bauxite and oil and gas, and
Physical shit.
it's
It's not
physical
ones that
natural resources that you're going
not
to have to
one. Yeah.
defeat them in war to, and then everybody else who wants them to try and have access to and control. So that's a threat. That's what the Cold War was fought over. The Cold War was fought over embedding this mob state that started in the 1600s, this slavery system, tax, debt, and wage slavery everywhere in the world. And up until Russia said, yeah, no more. And Xi rose to power and started to remove what we had put into the mob state in China. Look at the documentary China Hustle, right? Um, Now 80% of the world's population is saying, no, we're not going to do this wage debt and tax slavery system. We're not going to allow mob rule in our countries.
So World War
And
One.
our Praetorians, forgive me, one
Yeah, no,
final
go,
piece.
no, go for it.
Our Praetorians don't have the capacity to project that power anymore because, like fucking idiots, they decided to expend their best and brightest and their full capabilities in the global war on terror, which was the dumbest fucking thing ever. We should have gone in and leveled the parts of Afghanistan where these people had the camps and the leadership, the Taliban. Should have just leveled it and then pulled
In and
back
in and
and
out
said,
30
okay,
days. Yeah.
don't make us come over here again.
Yeah.
We
In
should have
and out.
left Iraq alone. You know why we went into Iraq? Specifically so we could draw Iran into a fight. We broke Iraq specifically so Iran could rise in power because Iraq was the natural counterbalance to Iran.
It's
We did all of this and we're still doing it. And we're trying. So, what was Operation Maxwell Epstein? And I say Maxwell Epstein because her father, Robert Maxwell,
her
is the
dad was
one
Mossad.
with Roy Cohn, right? Going back in the day, straight up mobster shit, right? But the borderline Wall Street and lawyer mobsters, right? The high brain, prefrontal cortex mobsters, right?
Yeah.
Um, that's what that operation was about. That operation was about uh, destroying the monarchies and the princesses, destroying the theocracies, putting this mob state Praetorian backed system, slave system, because Romans were enslaved for 300 years. People all look at Rome, they don't realize Romans were enslaved for all of them, even the emperors by the Praetorians to sustain the Praetorians' wealth and power. And if you decided as an emperor or as a nobleman or as a senator or as a common person to disagree, they destroyed you and or killed you 3, 5, 7 generations out for 300 years. We put a system similar, way more sophisticated and complex in place, the Praetorians, 300, 1645, 1649 on the continent, 1685 in England. We're still running under that system. We tried to make that system global. We got pretty close. It's not about communism. It's not about, fascism. Now we've got Nazis and we got a Nazi problem, and that's very real. And we got a Marxist problem, and that's very real. But Marxists are idiots, so they're easy to
Self-cleaning oven.
deal with, right? Um, but it's something much deeper. Nazis and Marxists actually emerged out of the mafia state, emerged out of the Praetorians, the modern Praetorian system. They're not extraneous to, they emerged naturally from within. That's why they're still with us, right? I suspect that the Kennedys, because JFK said this in a speech, right, at the press club or something. I can't remember, in, what was it, 62, 63, shortly before he was killed. He, and forgive me, I can't remember the exact terms, but there is a conspiracy that works in these ways.
Yeah.
This is what he was talking about. He wasn't talking about the communist. He was talking about the mafia state, the mob state. He was talking about the Praetorian system.
Guerrillas by night instead of armies by day.
Correct.
Their successes are publicized, their failures are censored.
Correct.
It's
Yeah, that's not communism. That's That's
well,
DC
he says
today.
it very clear. He says the very word secrecy in a free and open society is repugnant. Secrecy. Didn't
And
say fascist, didn't say
we,
commies. Secrecy.
yes. And what better explains a mob state? And when I say state, I mean a nation state. What best, or a state within, a territorial state within, what best describes the functioning of bureaucratic system than we celebrate failures and, hide failures and whatever that, I can't remember the exact words. You just said it, right? But, that's exactly what's happening. He was talking. So I suspect that the aristocracy, the American aristocracy, with partnerships in the UK, because we are still British.
Yeah.
Straight up. Even you Irish fellas, right? We're still Brits, and we got some unpleasant business there, and we did some horrible shit to the Irish for about 800 years, especially that dude Cromwell. People look at the English Civil War and it's pretty bad, right? Pretty bad, but I think something like 1.4, 1.1, 1.4 million Irish were killed. There was only like 2 or 3 million Irish.
That's insane.
Right? He just slaughtered. He had a thing about the Irish. It's more complicated than that. Sure. It's about economics and finance and that kind of stuff, and obligations on the. I suspect that Kennedy was killed. Robert F. Kennedy was killed. There were other people that were killed in the time too, by the way, and we don't, right? Brits, nobles. There was a lady who was a journalist who knew all these families and had moved with them, and she was killed after JFK. So there's a whole slew. But what I suspect is that the modern aristocracy thought that they were ready and capable to make a move against the Praetorians and the mob state, and they weren't ready. I suspect that Trump today and Elon and everything that's happening around that, and this goes back 20, 30 years, 20 some odd years, are now trying to, and this includes RFK Jr., are now trying to take up that fight again, have been involved in that fight and laying the groundwork to remove the Praetorians just like Constantine did in the Battle of Milvian Bridge, and dismantle the mob state.
So I'm going to send you two articles actually. I'll just text
Say
them.
again?
I'm going to text you two articles. You don't need it
Okay.
right now. One of them is from I think 2011, and it's like the corporations that rule the world, and it's just this. It starts with 43,600, and they own
Yeah, yeah.
90%, and
Not
then they
quite
go
well
down, and
there.
it goes
Yeah,
on and
yeah.
on. It's by a Forbes, and eventually it comes down to 147 countries that control everything. And it's an older article. But that one, and then another one about uh about AI, which is one of the better articles I've read, called Situational Awareness by Leopold Aschenbrenner, kind of about how it's not becoming a military thing, or has been, and whatever. But so just in short, to look at it, just everything we've talked about for the last, we'll just say from 1900 forward. It obviously goes back farther, but just World War One, get rid of all the princes, get rid of all the kind of the small time rulers, and then World War II is you expand it. The U.S. wins, even we didn't expend the most soldiers, but the U.S. won through industrial might, Lend-Lease. So now all of kind of NATO, Korea, beginning Cold War with Berlin, they're kind of all your unofficial, almost subjects of the U.S. in terms of like we are the big force. They all have their own things, obviously not downplaying the efforts of all the European countries in the Cold War, but it was really led by the U.S. and without us, it would have failed anyway. And
By
then it's well,
Britain.
they're all on the U, yeah, and they're all on
Not
the
by the US, by London, by
well,
Britain. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
just using it as a U.S. We'll call it Ireland. I
I
don't care.
gotcha.
Just the main power
Yeah,
source, main Exhibit A.
yeah.
They're the thing, Bretton Woods, everyone on our debt, everyone part of this bigger empire versus the ones that didn't want to do it. And then as we move forward and forward and forward, we're again seeing just the same iteration, right? It's the coalescing of more and more. It's like whenever you ever seen like a simulation of you know, of like a solar system being formed or a galaxy being formed. It starts with all this just shit and dust. It all collapses at the center, the heaviest, and that's where you get nuclear fusion.
Yeah.
And then you have the planetary disks. They start swirling. They become the planets, and then they
Hmm.
crunch. They heat up, and then there's bombardment periods for like a billion years, where all the rest of the shit in the solar system starts hitting these different gravity wells: Jupiter, Earth, Mars, whatever. You can kind of start seeing it until it creates whatever it is. And so, what we're really looking at over the last, we'll just say, 124 years is just the ever more and increasing uh consolidations of power. And there's no such thing as ever getting rid of it. When you get rid of the local mob or the local whoever's running it's the same thing. You get rid of Saddam, it's a power pours a vacuum. It creates its own thing again. So it almost all balances out. You can have a dollar, or you can have four quarters, or you can have 10, but you have a dollar. So as you get rid of these smaller power factions, the power didn't go away. Just the one at the very top is that much more powerful. So moving forward with that, and then just you can see it with just corporate consolidation in media or auto or food or just these giants like even shit like GE, or I think Northrop Grumman, or I think they own the shipbuilding company that makes all the aircraft carriers. So now even that's Northrop Grumman. It's just a different company. They're getting so fucking large and they're so powerful. And then the final push at the quote unquote end, nothing ends, but at the end is now to move even more so, to strip even so get princes. No, no, we're not even worried about that. Now it's just your own independence. If you can't even have a job because it's going to be automated, and you don't even you do, I mean, and what, give it another year or two, and they'll be like, yeah, we don't need Tommy's podcast. We'll feed 1,600 episodes of him talking in, and we'll realistically be able to synthesize what a new show would look like. You're pulling away more and more and more and more to you're getting this black hole of power. Primarily, the what's giving it an edge over all of human history is you always have these emperors, pharaohs, kings, whatever. But with AI, and it's not going to do it all, but in terms of power projection and like vortexes creating these black holes of power, they are now more pronounced than ever before. And so why did Trump, RFK, whoever, why did they, and they did, and they got close with 2016. They hit him, they wounded him, but they didn't kill the deep state. Why are they going for it now? Why did they play their hand? Why didn't they just wait? And it might be that there was no more time to wait. It's you're looking at AI, and you're going once they no longer, because right now they're still banking on soldiers following unlawful orders and shooting fellow Americans. Some might, most won't. Once you have fucking AI bots, they don't care about the Constitution. Just remove the Constitution update, whatever. They might be looking at it and going, we didn't want to have to go for it now. But if we don't go for it now, it's lost forever. And I don't think they succeeded, but I don't think they failed. They did something in 2016. He didn't get in by accident. Someone with power, with no elections are real. Well, then how the fuck did he get in? It's down to the two scenarios. Either it is real, or there's some power in the DOD or Wall Street that wanted him in. He's still
Correct.
alive,
Faction.
which
Faction.
means that there's an iceberg on. You see Trump, you see there's icebergs underneath the surface that you don't see. And you see some public ones. Elon Musk that's a non-trivial one, the richest guy in the world who
But he's
shoots.
created
Yeah, but he's a front
all
for
five of his
Starbucks.
main industries are heavy national security industries,
He's the single
which gets me
biggest
back to,
benefactor. But yeah,
which gets me,
a thesis of
yeah,
everything I just said.
yeah.
Why are they, you might say, you idiot, why did you go for it? Why did you throw the Hail Mary now? It got intercepted. You might go, well, there's only 3 seconds left on the clock. They might be looking at it and going, the power is accelerating so fast that if we don't go for the Praetorian Guard now, if we go now, we have like a 50% chance of success. If we wait another 10 years, we're at zero.
I
That's
have a
where I think it is.
okay. So along that reasoning,
End
because
word
I think
bomb.
that's very solid, very solid. I want to maybe tweak it a little bit.
Oh,
Okay.
I don't give a shit. Yeah, turn a
Yeah,
buck.
yeah, yeah. No, so very solid reasoning, but I want to tweak it just a little bit. There are factions in everything. Nothing is a monolith. Even in our own family, even in our own neuron, the default mode network in our own brain is
Yeah,
factional,
yeah.
right? I believe that what happened, give me a second.
Mm-hmm.
Fukuyama was totally and absolutely wrong. History never
History.
ends.
No, never.
Never ends. There are families that are still trying to restore the balance from the 1600s. There are families that are trying to restore the balance from World War One. I believe very firmly that, and I don't mean go back to the old ways. That's not what they're trying to do. I believe that something was set in motion with the assassination of RFK in particular. If they just stopped at Jack would have been one thing. But the fact that they went and killed, right, that 3, 5, 7 generate, right?
Mm-hmm.
And oh, by the way, you don't have to kill 3, 5, or 7 generations. You have to depower them. You have to make sure they're defanged and they don't have the power, influence, and capacity to come after you. And how they did it with the Kennedys, they made them economically dependent on the Praetorian system.
Well, and dad was a bootlegger. He's
Grandpa was a bootlegger.
Yeah,
That's right.
he betrayed
So
him.
he knows these people intimately. That's why they went after them, because they could see where that integration was going, right? So I suspect one of the factions was set in motion in the early 1960s to bring this down from the inside. But by that point, it was already so powerful, it could kill a president and get away with it.
Say that last sentence again. What was set in
Okay.
motion? Who set
I
what?
believe that when in the 1960s, one of the factions committed and has been moving ever since from within the regime, within the Praetorian system, from within the mob state to bring it down,
To bring the mob state down.
bring the mob state down, restore the balance of power to the oligarchs, princes, the people, and the system, the regime.
Okay.
At the same time, the other two factions, and there are two primary other factions, have been going all out for total and absolute power and control. even were you needed to create the technologies, excuse me, the
You're good,
products, the
man.
services, the capability you needed. Excuse me.
You're good, dude.
I'm gonna mute my mic for a second. Give me some.
You're good. You can see I destroy like a gallon of water during each show. You're fine.
I, I rarely talk in any given day, so this is
You're good.
um I come out of Silicon Valley and I've seen a lot of things, a lot of things. And I come out of tech and tech investing world. And I went into, the intelligence and special operations and those things. Um, and I had 11 years in that world too. I've never done any great battles or any, I'm not one of the big, well, uh, one of the cool guys, but I took it very serious and I got very deeply into it for quite a number of years. And I know some of those guys, Medal of Honor kind of guys, like
Yeah.
Earl Plumley and some others. I believe that they're moving now for two reasons. One, they can, that the balance has shifted now technologically, informationally, consciousness wise as well, meaning awareness. I don't mean the fancy, pot smoker, right?
Clarify which group is moving, the one that set it forward in the 60s or the other two that are
So
going to be
let's
all
go
in
back to the
power.
book I wrote, The Eternal War, right? There's two resentfuls factions and one responsibles faction,
Got
always in everything. And the two resentfuls factions, the two, the folks driven by envy, they, in the modern era, we call them Nazis. Don't take fascist out because that was Mussolini. That wasn't fucking Hitler, right? That was a separate thing. Not to give fascism a pass either,
I don't
but
I don't care.
Nazis are Nazis, and let's not diminish Nazism, right? National socialism with fascism. That's a whole different thing. We already have fascism. The revolving door between corporations, banks, major telecom companies, and the regulators, and then the law firms and the banks, that's a fascist system.
Yeah,
By definition, we
they're
already
all in
have a
triangles.
fascist system. We don't have a Nazi system. That's a different thing.
No, we're funding them in
What's
Ukraine.
that?
I said no, we're funding them in Ukraine. Don't worry. We have
Correct.
that.
That's
We have that
exactly,
division
yes.
too.
Yeah,
We're
yeah,
rolling
yeah.
out
Well,
this
and
week.
there is a push. So
Yeah.
the Nazi faction, and we've always had Nazi-like people throughout history, right? These are eugenicists, and
Yeah.
for all intents and purposes, statist eugenicists. And then you have the Marxists, we call them Marxists now, but we've always had them. And these are the people that they're your utopians. They want to tear everything down and make the world in their perfect image. The problem is they're batshit fucking certifiably clinically insane.
And they're
And there
limited.
is no such thing as a utopia there, except for kind of what we're seeing in the streets of San Francisco.
Yeah.
That's a Marxist utopia because they're fucking insane.
That's the
That's my
meme.
hometown, and I hate what's happened in my
That's
life because
that's the stoner meme. Yeah,
right, that's the
you're all
stoner.
in huts covered in
Very
mud,
good.
fucking each other. Yeah.
So you want to put it, the Nazis are the alcoholics. Well, that's not necessarily true, but because they did a lot of drugs. The
Did a lot.
Nazis are the synthetic stoners,
Yeah.
synthetic drugs, and the Marxists are the organic.
The weed, psilocybin,
Yeah, the stoners that we
all
think of.
these things,
So
which and as an
druggies
aside,
versus
I was gonna
stoners.
say, as an aside, all of these things, which in small, moderate doses can be fine, but they're all retarded and they go
Yeah,
off.
well, okay, but that's the problem with crazy peoples. They have impulse control. They can't control their impulses, so they can't stop at the what is
Yeah. Well,
beneficial
yeah.
level,
Yeah.
right? Um, so those are the two factions. They're always at war with one another, but because they share a lot of commonality, they will collaborate loosely, right, to bring about the great change, the revolution. But at some point, they go to war with each other inevitably because they are mortal enemies. Because either one of those could exist with some of us responsibles around.
Hmm.
They cannot exist with others of, either the Nazis or the Marxists around, because those are two ideologies that are so opposed, even though they sound like they have shared. So point is, those three factions, right, have been in war in the Western world for over 100 years, specifically as they are now, labeled and defined. Well, Nazis since the 30s, 20s, which is 100 years, right? 100 bloody years.
Mm.
The Marxists going back to the 1860s, 1870s. But the point is, the problem with the responsibles faction is they're rarely ever actually a faction. They're normally just fragmented numbers of peoples and individuals and entities and organizations and leaders, and they're so busy getting shit
I was
done.
about to say they're so busy taking care of their own
They're
families and
getting shit
communities
done, right?
that
So the
they
problem with the
don't vie
mob
for these
state,
big manic ideas.
right? Yeah. So the mob state is the Nazis and the Marxists. That is the mob state. They create nothing. They produce nothing, and they can't.
Yeah.
All they can do is live parasitically. The responsibles, on the other hand, build things, create things, innovate things, right? Constantly try to push back against those other two to give people a chance. It takes some really severe, substantive things happening to bring them together as a faction. And
Mm.
even then, it's very hard to, you know, with the planet formation thing and the solar system formation concept, most people don't realize that doesn't just happen. You have to have a sufficient shearing force, a gravitational wave or something else that passes through that field of gas in exactly the right way to start the spinning,
Okay.
to introduce the energy and the right levels, the right direct vectors, etc.
Give the spin.
Yeah, you've got to enter, and you can't just smack it, right? You got to enter.
Yeah.
So
All right.
it takes something of immense rare complexity to start a solar system to develop out of a field of hydrogen gas and particles of former suns, etc. The same thing is necessary to bring the responsibles faction together. You need some complex, sophisticated, just right shearing force to come in to where they realize, no, we're not going to be able to address and fix this in our own little ways and our own little, and that takes, and for a solar system formation, that takes billions of years.
And it is counterintuitive to, again, like you said, they're getting shit done, they're going to work, they're providing jobs, they're building their communities, and it is not in their nature to say I'm gonna go put my name up in lights and take it all over. So it's against their very, like, you have, it's
Correct.
like the all-star team in the Olympics. It's like
Correct.
Larry Bird, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant. It's like, yeah, there has to be a specific, because they're all hyper stars. They don't exist well together on teams
Well, and
unless,
they're
yeah,
so busy fighting their fights. They're so
yeah,
engaged in barely holding the line against these two fucking resentful factions.
that you finally realize, though, that the two have become so overwhelming
Correct.
that it is now a
Correct.
threat to all of us.
Correct. It's
Yeah.
like a viral infection. The viral infection has gotten the viral load has overwhelmed the immune system to such a degree that now it's a threat, a mortal threat to the host.
Hmm.
So, the body. So I suspect that what the Kennedys, both of them, and then the related assassinations around, set something in that was the shearing force. And not just that, but how the system, the mob state, hid all of it right in the open. Right? They hid all of it right in the open with the whatever reports, the Pruder report or whatever.
Warren Commission, Zapruder film.
Warren Commission. Yeah, this is the other one's the tape, right? Which now looks like it was doctored.
Yeah. Well, there's a specific frames that they are cut out. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but the point is that I believe that set something in motion. And since the early 1960s, there's been this power struggle going on inside the mob state. Well, let me rephrase, not in the mob state. There's been elements there, but the real power struggle has been happening in the Praetorians, which is the banks, Wall Street, right? And you can see it play out. It's been a conflict between, in the latest iteration, Janet Yellen and the San Francisco Fed, and now and then Fed chair, and then Treasury Secretary, and Colin Powell, not Colin Powell. What is the Fed chair's?
Yeah, the
Jerome Powell, not
Jerome.
Colin Powell's the old general.
Yeah.
Jerome Powell. They're at war. They're mortal enemies. Larry Fink is Jamie Dimon's mortal enemy,
Hmm.
right? So we've been watching this play out. We just weren't looking for decades. But now they're at a point to where they're responsible. So two things have happened. One, we have reached a tipping point to where if we don't deal with this infection, the mob state, it will kill the host. We're adding $1 trillion in debt every 100 days.
Mm-hmm.
The parasite is living so fully on the host that the host cannot survive at this point. Can't. Not in the form it is. Even if we get this infection down, we will never be the same. Now, does that mean America goes away and all that? I don't know. There's a chance for America to rise like Byzantium did out of Rome and go on for another 1,000 years. We have all the capacities, all the resources, all the land, all of the defensibility. The reason Byzantium went on for another 1,000 years after the fall of the Western empires because it was defensible.
That's in my limited that's what I think is going to happen. I think the Republic, as we know, it's probably coming to an end. But in terms of just the actual piece of land here between two oceans and floor resources, no, I don't think it's done.
I think America. So I don't
I
know
think it's
yet because
molting.
yeah, we don't know yet because
We have no idea. Yeah, no.
it's gotten really, really, it is really bad. But here's what I suspect. So the shearing force happened, right? That shearing energy came into the field, into the empire in the 1960s with assassinations and the cover up and everything that happened then and everything that's happened since. Personally, I believe that Trump was hand selected because he's the only oligarch that's clean.
Hmm.
I mean, they've tried. If they could have busted him on legitimate shit, they would have done it
They would have flooded the
long
internet
ago.
with videos of him fucking a child on Epstein's Island in
Yeah.
2015.
He's clean,
Yeah. Which is yeah.
right? And so they put him up as a sacrificial lamb
Mm.
to draw the fire, to
Oh.
show, right? Because common people, average people have been dealing with this for decades, right? This fucking criminal system, right? And the mob state and the Praetorians, common people and middle class people have been getting destroyed by it since the 60s. Especially took off in the 70s, right after they got away with the murders in the 60s and the power grab in the late 60s into the 70s. Took off in the 70s. Hell, the United States defaulted on its debt in the 1970s by not giving the gold back to anybody but France and going to the fiat system. That was a default. By definition, 50 years on, we're defaulting again, and it's way bigger now. So I believe personally, so that's the last minute, right? You have to stop the spread of the disease, and the disease is this mob state. And the Praetorian system that backs it, that makes money off of it. Now, that's not the whole banking system. That's not the whole financial system. A lot of those, there's good entities there doing good stuff. They're not necessarily good people, right? But they serve an important function to, just like, we've got bacteria and viruses in our body that we benefit from. We couldn't survive without them. Right.
Yeah. A company doesn't need to be a bunch of, Mother Teresa's to not be bad. It can just not be bad. Like I don't think, Chick-fil-A is bad.
It
I
just
don't know.
can't be oriented to kill the host.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't
To
think
take as much from the host.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think Burger King's building any churches, but I also don't think they're like raping anybody. I think they're just kind of serving like burgers. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. So I suspect that's what's happened. The shearing force happened in the 60s, that which started to shape the responsibles up together. It's taken 60 years to realize that they weren't going to be able to work it out. The responsibles weren't going to be able to do all their complicated stuff all over in the system and outside the system, et cetera. in the economy and in culture. They just weren't going to be able to do this. The infection is too deep. It's too widespread. It's in everything everywhere now, which only became worse with the 1994 Banking Deregulation Act that brought down the restrictions on financial entities getting involved in certain things, which is what led to this explosion in costs and housing prices and debt, um, and the middle class getting wiped out and all their assets being bought for pennies on the dollar. That's because the direct reaction to the 1994 Banking Deregulation Act, and then the advent of algorithmic and high frequency trading, which I have participated in. That's the alchemist's dream. You're creating money from nothing,
Mm.
literally. Well, not nothing. It's what's called computational capital or algorithmic capital. You're creating money from computations and algorithms.
Mm.
Nothing real other than electricity and hardware and some data flows. That's the alchemist's dream. It's just as artificial. Now, in some context where it's being used as a market maker in different stock exchanges around the world to help regulate the markets, and which I have a friend that does, he has a company that does that, Grasshopper Asia, to reduce the amount of fuckery that happens in the markets using high frequency algorithmic trading capabilities as a market maker. So heavily regulated, heavily restricted. That's powerful. That's necessary. But you've got these very predatory algorithmic high frequency trading platforms, which are what invested in social media to get closer to the news cycle and then start realize that we could create fluctuations in the global markets by manipulating social media.
Mm.
We can create movements in the global markets that we can make billions and trillions of dollars off of by causing wars in certain parts of the world, social movements in certain parts of the world, color revolutions. Every single one of anybody who does this, and I have a colleague who does, his name I won't mention, who goes back and looks at the market data related to all of the conflicts, color revolutions, everything going on around the world for the last 20 years. It all ties to social media, ties to media, ties to nonprofit organizations, government organizations, articles, pages that are paid for, reports and things out of think tanks, etc., that then are used as justification for certain things happening in the world, and the use of the military and intelligence capabilities to do these types of conspiracies. And by the way, I went to school for conspiracies. That's what the fucking Green Berets are. We are trained to go do conspiracies around the world by the U.S. government, by people that have been doing it for hundreds of years before us, right? So don't fucking tell me about. But the point is, if you look in market data, somebody always knows, always. And vast fortunes have been made artificially through manipulation of stocks and stocks on the markets, through algorithmic trading platforms, which are tied in again in these complex donations and funding of university chairs, the professors who do certain things, right? This complex web of how this money comes out is used to manipulate the information streams that drive things in the world. That these algorithmic trading platforms, which can move billions in milliseconds, tens of billions, they're all making money off of that. And that can't sustain, because it would work if those platforms had a feedback mechanism back into the base economy and had a feedback mechanism into jobs and into employment for people. But they don't, because it's purely artificial. So what you wind up with is an increasing amount of wealth, dollar denominated wealth in the top echelons of people, because you normally can't get on these platforms unless you have a couple 100 million and really several billion to even participate, right? And you still may not get to participate because they don't like your billions.
Mm.
So we've wound up with this system now where if we don't get the mob state under control, we don't reset. I don't think we're going to get rid of the Praetorian system, the modern Praetorian system, but we will reset it to pre-World War II. Because what people don't understand is that why Why is the most famous unit in World War II the OSS and the SOE in England? Right? The OSS and the SOE. Why? And who, by the way, who were those formed by and filled up with?
And
People out of Wall Street and the city of London. It
OSS
was
was
bankers,
Bill Donovan.
banking lawyers. It was, so what the fuck were they really doing?
OSS, precursor to the CIA, formed by Wild Bill Donovan. SOE, Special Operations Executive. I know
But
less about that.
who, okay, so Bill
But who
Donovan's
made
the
them?
face.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
Bill Donovan is not who, well, he's got his own, it was the Dulles brothers.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give you another piece. Back to this mafia, back to Wall Street, back to this artificial, mob system, financial system, and why it's so dangerous and we have to move. Um, the Marshall Plan, for a country to take money from the Marshall Plan, it had to put a specific portion of that money back to the CIA for
Mm-hmm.
intelligence work.
Yeah, they filtered like something like 10% of the Marshall Plan was
I
just
think it was
black
6 or 7%.
ops.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Right off the
well,
top.
fucking
To
insane.
get the
1%
money,
would be crazy.
yeah, to get the money, you had to pay the CIA the VIG.
It's just
The
old
VIG. You got to pay the VIG, the
new mafia,
tax.
same as the old mafia.
It's the mob, right? So
This mafia has satellites.
correct. So what I suspect again is that we've been trying to reset this. The oligarchs tried to reset it and some of the members of the government, et cetera, the good ones, have been trying to reset this since the 60s. The enemy was running ahead. The two resentful factions were running ahead, gaining power, gaining wealth with all these new technologies and all these new things that were coming out that they were funding and supporting, right? Through NIH. Oh, by the way, NIH, NSF were both founded by the CIA by the same entities at the same time, by the same people, National Science Foundation, National Institute of Health, right? So 60 years this has been going on. By the 2000s, in the early 2000s, I was hearing the conversation in certain circles that the pitchforks were coming. There was a recognition in the oligarchs and the new wealth and some of the old wealth that things have gotten really bad, and if we're not careful, there's gonna be a revolution. We were having that conversation being had in 2000, right? Which has started what started me down on that path ever since. We have to move now because the financial system is so out of control that votes don't matter and haven't mattered for 20 years. Because what matters is judges and lawyers and sheriffs and district attorneys and prosecutors. Because in order for a electoral system to work, a sharing of power system, because that's what that is, you have to have the jurisprudence system to back you up, right? That system has to maintain this balance between those trying to take total power and those trying to participate in power and power sharing and distribution. Well, what did the mob do in Prohibition? They bought judges and prosecutors and sheriffs and police chiefs and threatened others that they couldn't buy, right? So that system is so corrupted now. I don't know what they're going to, I know there's an all out effort. Every time I hear things, because I did voter fraud stuff back in 2019, 2020 on the OSINT side. Every time I turn around, I hear something very sophisticated, clever. People are working out a fraud that's happening here, a fraud that's happening there, this setup of fraud here. That's happening all over the country. I'm astounded at the efforts to counter the ludicrous amount of fraud efforts that's happening all over the country. But that's what I believe. I believe that the mob state was
Counter the current regime's
the
fraudulent.
current for the next election, for the upcoming election.
Gotcha.
Vastly, I never heard these things back in 2019, 2020.
So
Now they're all over. And of course, you got the counter to the counter, and
yeah, nothing.
yeah, but
Yeah,
again, I what I suspect is that the impetus to remove the mob state was as early as the 1960s. By the way, Truman, within like 3 months of chartering the CIA, regretted it and was trying to figure out
Yeah,
how to
we're
undo it.
made an American Gestapo. Yeah.
Right? Try
Yeah.
to and how he was doing it. And to Truman's credit, um, Truman was way more capable than FDR and everybody else thought Truman would be. And how did he do it? He pulled all kinds of strings to make sure the CIA didn't get funded.
Mm.
And then what did they do? Then they went through the back door through Wall Street and their influences on Wall Street and their relationships with Wall Street, and they got the Marshall Plan out there. So again, I'm belaboring a point, but
Yeah.
I think we're 60 years into the responsibles coming together, trying to remove this mafia state, the mob state, try and remove the bad elements of the Praetorians. I don't think they're going to get rid of the Praetorians completely because that is we are a mercantile culture and society. We come out of the British. They're a mercantilist society since the 1600s, um, and maybe even a little bit before. The Tudors destroyed Old England. We when we think of ourselves as English or British or Scottish or Irish, we think pre-Tudor periods because that's where our culture and society and language and everything was laid down. The Tudors came in at the end of the War of the Roses, and they destroyed everything. One insane, and I mean clinically insane family is what birthed the British Empire.
Mm.
So we got both Britishness, Englishness, Scottishness, Irishness, and then we've got Britishness, which is the insane Tudors and everybody since. But I think that we're 60 years in. We're at a point now where we have to do it now, or we lose everything. The the oligarchs and the certain numbers of individuals in positions of power and authority have finally come together over the last 4 years, last 3.5, 4 years. And now they are making their move. And their move isn't to take over. I think it is to try and push back against the mob state and reset the Praetorian system.
And for people whose knee-jerk reaction is like that's wishful thinking. There are no, white knights coming. You're correct, but the thing is these aren't well, if they're doing the right thing, I'd say that they are doing the right thing. They are white knight-ish, but it's much more realistic than that. It's they're looking at it and they're going, "Hey, we're all fucked if this thing keeps going." You might be like, "Hey, man, I don't want power. I don't want to." I'm like, "Hey, Tommy, you like having like a podcast? Well, what do you need? You need a civil society where people don't break into your house and electricity needs to work. Like, yeah, you can't even do that if this thing keeps going." So it's not that they're coming through to do the right thing, even though some are. A lot of it's also much more realistic. Like we're all fucked without this. So it's to me, I think that makes it much more palatable. Is like it's less of this like starry-eyed thing, and you're more like, yeah, man, we're all gonna be fucking dead if this doesn't go. And when you also look at that, you also go, that means there's legitimate interests. Elon Musk isn't doing this because he's just like has an I voted for Trump pin. This is a bright guy. He's worth a third of $1 trillion, and he's got self-landing rockets, and it's like the DoD or Space Force is like biggest client. Like this guy isn't retarded. There is legitimate reason for them to push back, and it's not one more reason why it's palatable is that no, it's not some utopian we're gonna get rid of the bad guys. And no, I think you'd agree with me, like none of this ever ends. In
No,
200 years, 1,000 years, whatever
the
it
eternal
takes,
war.
it's gonna keep going. It's gonna keep
Yeah.
going. But the point is just because it never ends doesn't mean don't try. It just means like no, just realistically, yeah, in 100 years or 500 years, there'll be another, and as it goes, and at that because of that though, we are just at there's the wave rises and it falls. It's the crest and the trough. It just means that we are at a turning point where enough people with enough power are like, yeah, this thing's going off the rails. It's going off the rails, and we're all dead if we don't stop it. and it won't be perfect, but I think it will happen simply because it's not so, the White Knight's coming. It's much more realistic. It's I just, we don't want to die, which is why it
So,
probably is happening.
completely in accord. Um, I have a saying that what defines a man is not that he does what's right and good, but it's that he does what's horrible and absolutely necessary.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I would, aside from all of the elucidation of the eternal war, because that's what we've been talking about, and it is eternal. This has been going on forever, and it will go on
It'll go
forever.
forever. Yeah.
There is a very positive note, if I'm right, and I suspect I am because I've been involved in some of these things for decades. Elon did not make himself. Now,
Yeah.
he's ludicrously intelligent and ludicrously capable, and you have to be. To be a prince, you have to be something more. That's just a fact, right? We are not all created equal.
Sure.
But he is in 5 industries that are all heavy national security industries. You do not get into those industries, no matter who you are, unless
Somebody
the national security state
they signed off.
lets you in
Somebody
and then
stamped it.
gives you the contracts and et cetera, right? What this means, and this, oh, by the way, goes all the way back to PayPal, because payments and FinCEN keeps a record of all payments. You can't do payments anywhere in any form or fashion unless you get the stamp of approval from the state, right? From
And
the
you don't
national security state.
and you don't
So
acquire Twitter,
you don't acquire
which
Twitch. So this gets
is
back to, okay,
is
so
the
this
state
gets to what I'm
organ.
saying.
Yeah.
Something, and this is what should give people confidence, but not confidence to not get involved. The princes cannot do this themselves. They can't. They've been trying for a very long time. The people and the princes have got to come together, and people have got to get over this aversion to princes that was sold to you as a lie to enslave you in the first place 400 years ago. Something was set in motion 60 years ago. Elon is an example of that. JD Vance is an example of that. Vivek is an example of that. There are others, on and on and on. Trump is an example of that. There was a thing that was set in motion 60 years ago was we are going to get these people out of our government. We are going to break this mob state. And now is the time we have to do it, and we're ready to do it. And what I'm getting at is this. If there are people that have been made by that faction in that system that are Elon's level and close to Elon's level, there is immense power and immense capabilities. And I'm going to give you an example. The mob state could turn off telecommunications in the country in an instant. Why is Soros buying all the radio stations? So
Hmm.
you only get your information from radios, which means they control it.
Hmm.
All 9,500 news outlets in the United States are owned by 4 companies. Actually, it's 3 now, right? Period. That's a fact. You can go look it up. Okay. The point is, they could turn off the power grids. They could turn off telecommunications. They could turn off social media. Twitter, Starlink, Tesla power systems would still be online.
Mm-hmm.
So think of that. And all of that was set in motion over 20 years ago. And more than that, with the technologies that were necessary to launch, to start then. So people need to understand we're involved in the end phase, right? The end part of a saeculum, as Neil and Hal would talk about. We're in the crisis phase. It's going to go into the late 2030s, more than likely. They think the late 2020s or early 2030s. I don't think so. I think it's going to go into late 2030s. But immense power and capabilities and forethought and careful effort while under attack the whole time and et cetera has been going on for 60 years. And we got way more on our side, way more on the side of, again, not good, but way more on the side of what's right and what functions and works, which is probably the better way of looking at it than
Yeah.
people realize. Way more power, way more wealth, way more technical capabilities. Going to be some hardship as in transition and shifting over, et cetera. There is a fight ahead. There's no way to escape it, right? You don't you don't defeat a mortal virus without putting antibiotics in the system and going to war with the fucking virus.
Yeah. That's how I tend to look at it is like, I mean, space is the high ground. It is the highest ground. And we knew
Yes.
after World War II that air superiority was the big dick on a battlefield. Then above air is obviously space, Space
Yep.
Command. The shuttle had military applications. The NRO, Keystone, and Hexagon and
Yep.
Corona and all the that is the high ground. You don't just like waltz on in and go, I'm gonna put 100,000 satellites up in low Earth orbit. That hyper contested space that we've been wargaming with ICBM since the 50s. You don't just walk in there and you don't go build, like I've used this example before. You don't go build a skyscraper next to the White House with a line of sight to the Oval Office without you being signed off on by the fucking Joint Chiefs. Oh yeah, I'm just gonna build something up here and maybe I have a gun, maybe I don't. Good luck. You get shot in the face. That same reason is you don't just waltz on up to the high ground. And you don't just go on in and go, I'm gonna buy Twitter. You don't do these things without,
One of the
I would say, the
factions.
definition of at least 51%, if not more, of the true power of the world.
I don't agree with that. I don't
Okay.
agree with that. It can be as much as 20%.
Okay.
And
Well,
normally it's
nonetheless, not zero.
rarely more than 20%. But
Point is
the,
you have a team.
you have to have a very powerful faction that's deeply
Okay.
embedded in you have to have one of the main factions, and it
Okay.
has to be the responsibles faction, by the way, that does that.
Hmm.
And it has to happen across decades. And it
Hmm.
has to predate you altogether because they're embedded in an environment of constant conflict. It's eternal war. So very good what you're saying. Now let me give you another piece. Russia and China are way more capable militarily than the United States, as we're seeing in Ukraine right now, but that's not even the half of it. Because instead of focusing all these complicated, sophisticated technologies and you know overly complex weapon systems, they focused on two things primarily. Now third with the robotics, etc. One was ballistic missiles, hypersonic missiles, right?
Yeah.
So I don't care if you have an aircraft carrier and 35 ships out in your flotilla. One hypersonic missile can take that out and you can't shoot it down.
And King's
Brilliant.
all
Cost
the
me
Russians and
$40 million. That whole carrier group is something like 6 billion,
yeah, Dongfeng, that's the Chinese, right?
right?
Dongfeng
Okay.
14.
There's one others. There's one other area that the Chinese and the Russians focused on, counter satellite warfare.
Hmm.
We don't have it. They can shoot our satellites out of the fucking sky. Our GPS is gone, which is what all these sophisticated weapon systems depend upon. The Russians are proving this now. They don't have to shoot the satellite down. They're jamming the GPS, right? So we over focused, right? The two resentfuls factions and their technologists, they over focused on very sophisticated, overly sophisticated weapon systems that have very, very unsecurable Achilles heels.
Hmm.
Knock out communications, knock out GPS, and most of it stops right there.
Yeah.
Oh, if they're got back channels and systems, et cetera, okay, knock out the electricity. That's what they're doing in Ukraine. They're not taking out the electricity grids and electricity very carefully. They're not doing it everywhere. They're not doing that to punish the Ukrainians. Ukrainians are they're Slavs. They're fucking they're Kievan Rus. And by the way, we'll never ever 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 overcome what we've done there ever. The West will never recover from this evil that we've done there. But why are the Russians knocking out specific power center, electrical distribution centers? Because all of our electronic surveillance, warfare, computers, targeting solutions, all that shit is dependent upon electricity and data centers and servers and radio towers. I don't have to destroy the country. I just need to, because you overcompensated in the West, and we over committed to computer warfare, basically. Well, computers have Achilles heel. It's real easy. Two of them, one data centers, and the other's power, electricity. And you can't run enough fucking generators and solar power and wind power to fight a war. By the way, solar power and wind power will never fucking fight a war.
No, they'll never do anything.
Ever. Right? So, and aside from that, now if the US decides they really want to go to war, Russia and China don't have to go to war with the United States. They don't ever have to set foot in the United States. All they got to do is knock our satellites out. And now our ships don't work, and our fucking airplanes don't work, and our drone swarms don't work. That's all they got to do. And they don't have to knock out all of our satellites. All they got to knock out is GPS satellites and select communication satellites. That's it. They don't have to touch any of the Starlink stuff. Unless, right? Now, there's an interesting thing because with microsatellites, you can knock out 100 of them. I'll put Elon with the reusable rocks. I'll put another 100 up tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I don't think any of that was done against Russia or China. That was done against the two resentful factions in our own government in case they decided to go to war with the American people and the responsibles faction of the oligarchs and the Praetorians.
You could almost have the responsibles use China and Russia to knock out the American satellites. Those are the
Again,
resentful satellites.
back to what we were saying, right? You don't get them to do it. You don't do that because that causes problems, collusion, and you can get taken down. You don't have to do that. You just have to have information related to, like Victoria Nuland, who's trying to take down Russia, and Blinken, Anthony Blinken, etc. All you have to do is have information related to something that they're trying to do to harm Russia or China that would require the most obvious reaction would be to take down one of these satellites. And you just, in some form or fashion, ensure that they're able to get that information.
Yeah. That's what I meant is back to what you're talking about earlier. No,
Yeah.
not necessarily, hey, trying to shoot this down, but more
Yeah.
present it to where it's like,
Which we already have an example of this. Okay. Early on in the war, Ukraine, with British help and American help, had a dirty nuke in the Zaporozhye, or in the area of the Zaporozhye power plant.
mm-hmm.
Russia had watched all of it. Now, did they watch all of it all on their own, or know to look there on their own? Was there because there's factions in the CIA too, right? There's a responsibles faction in the CIA. Did we help them directly or indirectly look at the right thing?
Probably.
Because there were phone calls made, back channel phone calls made. And remember, there was a closed door UN Security Council meeting. China all of the main players were there. And all that shit about Zaporozhye power plant, et cetera, that all backed away. And all the little subtle stuff that was being put out there about the Russians doing a dirty nuke or using a nuke, that all disappeared. So you don't have to, the enemy's still the enemy.
Sure.
Right? But sometimes my own internal enemies are more dangerous than the external enemy. I can't ally with the external enemy. They're still the enemy. And if I do anything whatsoever to support or help them in any way that isn't they're my enemy, then the other two internal enemies that I got against me inside, the other two factions are going to use that to come after me and remove me.
Yeah.
Right?
Hmm. It is hyper complex.
This is the problem when you have a mob state. The way the mob works is they're bullies,
Mm-hmm.
and they operate in they operate in the barely visible open, right out in the open, right? They operate right out in the open in a way that's barely visible. I knew an old Coke distributor, major, long ago. Might or might not have dated his daughter for some time. He never got arrested, and he moved a lot. And this is back in the hardcore,
Yeah.
Miami Vice kind of days, right, where there was serious effort to stop these flows. Um, and he did it for like 30 years and walked away. I asked him one time after years, some years after, and he'd been out for some time. And I asked him, how the hell did, one, because nobody ever talked about it, right? So I had to be careful. And, but I somehow it came up, and I asked him how somebody could do something like this, not pointing to him. I said, how could somebody do something like this and never get arrested or he said, do everything right out in the open and look like you belong there.
Yeah.
Because the way the human brain is designed is to look for a thing that doesn't fit.
Yeah.
And we focus on that. Even if it does fit, but it doesn't make sense to us, we'll focus on that and we'll totally ignore 90% of shit that's going on that shouldn't be going on, but it looks like it belongs. That's how the mob works. That's how the mob state works. It works that way visually, intellectually, emotionally, psychologically, informationally, right? It operates right out in the open, but it is doing things that it shouldn't be doing, writing laws, regulations, ruling from the bench, right? It's doing things that are not right and shouldn't be done, but they look like they have authority, or they look like it looks like it should be happening. So, okay, right? It looks normal. It looks natural. None of it is. That's how the mob works. So the problem with the mob, when you have a mob state, is that the mob state exists by warping reality always, all the time, everywhere. And it makes it nearly impossible to see what's going on, what's actually going on,
Mm.
right? Tying into our cognitive dissonance circuitry, which is very powerful in the brain. So we see all of this stuff around us all the time. Half of it we don't even believe is happening. You can't just go after the mob with the truth. The mob state. It will twist and warp and contort and right. The only way you can go after the mob, which has been happening since 2016 with the mob state, is you have to draw it out
You
into
have to draw.
obvious action,
You have to.
which is why they put Trump forward because he's clean.
Yeah. Yeah. Give me 1 second. Let me piss again.
Yeah.
I want to find your Twitter. Um, there's a flight simulator game I played called Nuclear Option, where it's just like team versus team on a big map trying to nuke each other. But one of the things I would always do is, if you haven't like discovered part of a map yet, obviously you can't see like what pieces are there. So you like a lot of times early on in like a match, if it's like a 3 hour match, what you'd want to do early on is I would get the interceptor fighter jet. I'd strip it of all weaponry, give it like half fuel so it's lighter, and then just full throw, just afterburner it, not going for any target and going in a really not safe way, just kind of right through the enemy lines. You go over, and I mean, you just get raped to death by AA fire, missiles, and everything. But what you're doing is, I mean, you could look at the map. Your teammates could look at the map. All of a sudden, all the radars are there. It is, there it is, there it is. And now
Yeah.
we're going to use that for the next 3 hours. We're going to pinpoint all, and they can
Yeah.
move a little bit, but we know
Yeah.
where they are. And it takes a while to actually unlock the afterburner jet. You start with a shitty prop plane. So how can you still, it took me a lot longer playing the game to realize like, oh, you don't even need the jet. You just go right up to it and then you just fire a couple just don't even lock on to anything. Just go see that mountain over there. Fuck it. Shoot an AA miss. Goes over, nothing's happening. The game lags because you see all the AA fire going, then there's everything sending the bombers. That's what Trump is they just threw it right over and they went because what they're trying to say is, and historically they've gone, hey, there's a bunch of SAM sites on that, and the mob's going, that's disinformation, that's hate speech, and all of us are going, man, you guys are crazy. So finally they just went, you know what, fuck it. Here's an AA missile called Trump.
Bing,
Throw it over.
bing,
He's a rapist, human
bing.
trafficking, COVID, fucking BLM,
So
Antifa, and all of a sudden you're like, holy
why do you think
shit.
he wrote the tweets that he wrote?
Yeah, it really was just
To draw
like
out
high vis vests.
okay, and now the only way, so beautiful analogy, great reference there, okay? The only way you can do that though is you have to be strong first. You've got to be in a strong, defensible position because they might launch
Well,
missiles
that's the
or
other thing is no,
rockets and
you do that once your buddies are in the air and you're like, do you have all the nuclear cruise missiles loaded? Yeah, it's like, all right, I'm going in kamikaze.
there you go,
You
right?
don't
You've
do it at
got
the
to be in a
beginning
position
because
of strength, and it's
they'll
taken
fuck you up.
60 years for the responsibles to get into the position of strength.
Hmm.
Now, once you do that, and you highlight all that, and you draw it all out, which is so obvious now, right? You draw it all out. You have to continue to draw it out so the
Yeah.
ludicrous surreality bullshit is like, wait a
Don't
second.
don't let them wash it out in the
Yeah,
news
you can't,
cycle.
yeah, they can't re-hide it through another lie,
Yeah.
right? It's so obvious and blatant. And you have to force them to a position to where, like this upcoming election, where they're trying to just steal it. Just steal it. Hoping this is the way this mob mind works, right? This is the way this mind works. We're going to steal it, and you're going to have to fight us to get it back, and we don't think you will.
Hmm.
And when I fight, I mean not in the courts and all that. I
Yeah.
mean you're going to have to gunfight
Go
us.
kinetic. Yeah.
We're going to have to go because here's the thing: mobs never end unless in a mob war.
No, they're removed. Yeah. No one. Yeah.
There is no other way to remove this mob state
You
than a
don't
mob war.
you don't vote out the local mob boss. You fucking shoot
Doesn't
him.
happen. They just replace them with somebody else,
Hmm.
right? Now, I'll give you an example. So Giuliani goes after the mob in New York in
Hmm.
the 80s and 90s. Did he really though?
I don't know enough about
He
that.
got rid of the
That,
street
that
mobs.
yeah.
He got rid, so here's
Okay.
what you do. Okay. When you're ready to evolve, when you're a mobster, right? Or a resentful, well, I don't know. When you're a resentful, you're a mobster, you're a Nazi, you're a Marxist, and you have evolved to the next level of the take of the steel of the slavery system. You don't want to maintain all the costly bullshit of the in the conflicts and deal with all the old stuff that could take you down. So you got to make it look like you're going to get taken down.
Oh.
And what do? You put less competent people into leadership, and then you leak information to the quote unquote good guys, the white hats, and they come in and they take those organizations apart, RICO acts, and you know, take 180 people, the Gambino family, and put them in prison. Even old man Gambino himself, right? And you put a guy like John Gotti in charge.
Hmm.
He's a total fucking idiot.
Yeah.
And he gets taken down. And look, the white hats, the
The
good
mob,
guys won. The mob's gone.
but the top 1% or 10% of the mob
Never
took
went anywhere.
90% of the money, and they went, dropped the whole shtick with the cigars and the strippers. Now we're opening Lehman Brothers. It's a big building, glass. It's in the downtown Manhattan. No more fucking, no more bars in Upper East Side or some shit.
Correct.
Yeah, you get rid
You
of the.
got to do a little bit of that here and there to keep it make it look like the mob's still kind of around, so it's never quite taken out,
Mm,
right? But we are the power now. How many fucking judges and politicians and prosecutors and sheriffs, et cetera, have been bought over the last 100 years, or threatened or intimidated to not run in the first place? When you have that, so what we have to understand is that the amount of liquidity that the mob adds to the U.S. economy is ludicrous. Cartels, which are a U.S. mob CIA creation, we own them, right? That's our guerrilla auxiliary and underground forces, as we'd say in the Green Berets,
that's our Mexican pharmacy.
right? Um, Same with Colombians. Colombians were never taken down, right? They just made so much fucking money and everything had become so obvious that, okay, we'll shut that down. We'll kill Pablo Escobar. We'll shut that down. We'll switch to the Mexicans. Okay, well, that's running up to its end. Where are we going next? I don't know. But point being is that over the last 100 years, starting with prohibition did a number. It fundamentally changed the nature of the U.S. economy by adding so much free liquidity into the banking and financial system, meaning there didn't have to be, and it skewed the economy, real GDP numbers dramatically because you don't need baseline fundamental economic development when you can skim billions of dollars right off the top that you don't pay tax on, and it goes right back into the banking systems and the financial systems. You make that big enough, like hundreds of billions a year in just the drug trade, 270 billion, 290 billion in the human trafficking trade. That's $500 billion, more than $500 billion a year in free money right there. Now there's a caveat, proviso. You got to make sure that the money printer's going so that you have the money, and you got to have the ways in which the money gets to the desperate enough people. So you need enough people on the state dime to go buy, who will buy drugs and who will go for these types of pleasures and things because their life's shit and they're not employed and they're not working. And then you just skim that money right back through the drug, through the mob, cartels, et cetera. But, through the mob state, you launder it through the banks, you put it in the financial system, and a whole bunch of fucking wealthy people get wealthier without having to contribute a goddamn thing other than misery. And a state apparatus and structure that does, transfer payments enough to, so that these funds that are being printed could be skimmed off the top through Vice. And then you got to fund enough of a system that looks like it's fighting all that, NGOs and government programs and prisons and all, rehabilitation centers and all of this to make it look like you're fighting it. But
Most of which who actually, Child Protective Services, foster cares, those are the ones that fucking take kids. I mean, they're
so
the ones that.
we are a mob state, and we have been a mob state and economy since the 1920s. Prohibition was the worst thing we could have done. And oh, by the way, what did we do? we legalized alcohol and then doubled down on the war on drugs because it turned out drugs were even way more profitable,
Way more.
way easier to do, right? You can have a tiny little packet of powder versus bottle of, right? Way easier to transport and move, produce, way cheaper.
Why sell it at CVS with regulations and everything? Just make it illegal, fly it over the border. Maybe it has fentanyl in it. Maybe it's got I don't know. Maybe it's got horse cum. I don't know. Smoke it.
So this mob
It's
state, man, it's
Jesus.
bad. And oh, by the way, the Kennedys were going and their group were going after the drug trade then too, because the drug trade was just starting to take off, right? We were starting to have the problems with heroin in Vietnam, even that early on, Thailand, Vietnam, etc.
In one way, it's actually, I think, hopeful. Or I think there's because you realize it's been fucked since before you were born and before your parents were born, and maybe my grandparents were born late 20s, maybe even before they were born. So in one sense, it's like there's nowhere to go but up. You were born into a prison. Like this isn't life doesn't have to
You
be
were
this.
born into the mob.
Yeah. It's like life can get it. It's not that 2020 was stolen, but that was not the first like unjust, unfair. You know, they stole 2020. It's like, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's Tim Dillon said, uh, slandering Trump's Twitter was the nicest thing they've ever done to a president. The last time they fucking gave him a lobotomy in Dallas. So it's
Well, they're trying that now
well,
using
then
the
they're trying now, and they're
using the Ukrainian Nazis you referenced earlier, because that's exactly what it is.
but I think what you said about Elon, that's an important marker. It's like a tracer. It's like it's every whatever fifth round or 10th round. But just remember, so when you see a bunch of tracers, there's a lot more you're not seeing. Elon's kind of a tracer. Trump is a tracer. There are machines that are allowing the, I mean, and like you said, Elon, Starlink or battery systems or the Boring Company or AI development. I mean, you think DARPA is just letting him
Brain
in on there?
implants.
He is a tracer. He is a poker chip that represents a fucking ton. The fact that he's just open all day, every day, just this morning, just retweeting Tim Walz's statements. He's just like liar, bullshit. Like the fact that, yeah, he's not. I don't think he has a death wish. I think he's doing that from a place of power.
Correct.
And he and Trump maybe
And it isn't money power.
no, 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 no. It's like you said about Russia. It's real. It's we have our finances and derivatives. It's like Soviet Russia is just artillery. Can you face that? We have, but all of our technology, and we have a treaty that says like, welcome to the Russian winter. You're fucked.
Yeah.
None of that matters. Authority
Or let
doesn't
me turn your
matter.
power switch off and let's
Yeah.
watch your whole system collapse.
Yeah, authority doesn't matter. You go up and bang on the wall of NORAD and go, America, surrender, let us in. They go, yeah, no. You open the vault door, try it, faggot. Like there is real power. And
Yeah.
I think for anyone that is listening to this or will listen to this, it's a dark conversation, but I would actually, and maybe I'm naive or gullible or stupid, but I think it's actually very hopeful. I think
Yes.
it's legit. Actually, it's
Yes.
very, it's the
Yes.
doctor saying, there's the cancer, there's the cancer, there's the cancer. However, if we fucking slice it off here and hit you with these drugs, you're gonna be sick for a week or two, but you're better. It sucks, but it's also this is what it is. There is no kumbaya. It can be fixed. It's like it can be fixed. It's your building's on fire. You're on the third floor. It's like so the stairwells have collapsed. You're only 30 feet up though. You're gonna break your leg, but you're gonna survive. It is actually, I would say this is actually a very like silver lining conversation.
Get over your aversion to princes. Some
Yeah,
of them are in all out war on your behalf and you don't know.
yeah.
And they have been their whole life or decades of their life. And the thing about a prince that engages, right? This is The Art of Being a Noble that I'm writing now slowly on Twitter. I'll put it in a book form here, but two for man, I can't speak for women, right? I'm raising a teen daughter by myself, but I can't speak for women because
Sure.
half the time I don't understand her. I get it, but I don't understand her. Um, Two pivotal points in a male's life. One is when he puts in the hard work, and it is hard work over years to be recognized by those who have become a man as a man, right? And that's not something you can ascribe to yourself. It's something that's the other individual males that have become parts of the world of man, recognized members of the world of man, recognizing you as a man. That's a
The
huge
form,
pivotal part.
the form of peer
Right.
review.
And if it happens, which it doesn't happen as anywhere near as much as it used to, but when it happens, you're a man the rest of your life and you carry that weight. That's just the way it is. It's the same thing with being a noble. You can be born into an oligarchic house. You can be born into a noble house. That doesn't make you a noble. When you take up the family's obligations to fight for your people, in that moment, and it is a moment, it's an awareness. When it happens, you are never the same again. You are engaged in that fight every minute of your life for the rest of your life. And people have got to understand this, that what they have been convinced are princes are not princes. They're merchant bankers. They're merchant princes. They're not hereditary princes. Hereditary princes are something fundamentally different. Hereditary princes are, it's just like chimpanzees and bulls, and right. We're still these animals underneath. We are wired to follow a leader, and some are wired to lead down to the cellular level, and they are amongst us, and they are engaged in full out conflict. And to this point, it appears that there are certain families, even here in the Americas, that have been engaged in this specific fight for over 60 years to fix this problem, this specific problem, right? The problem goes on forever, but
Yeah.
this specific integration of the mob with the mafia with the government that happened starting in Prohibition and then finalized with the integration of the CIA, Wall Street, and the mafia in World War II, and its acceleration since then. There are families that tried to deal with it in the 1960s early on. They were killed or economically and financially ruined. And there have been families that have been trying to deal with it since. Now I believe that we're finally ready to take on that fight. But we can't leave these princes to do it on their own because they can't. The people have got to get their asses involved. And I'm not calling for armed insurrection and all that. Hell no. That's not up for us to decide, anyways. Peasants, the people, I don't want to say peasants, but the people don't ever actually start a civil war or a
That
revolution. It's always the princes. It's always some subset of the princes that realize that is the only way to preserve the land and the people, etc.
you know, back to what we were saying about the whole missile analogy and then there's the
Mm.
AA and they're gonna steal it and then say we don't think you have the balls to fight us. There's kind of I don't know if it's an alternative or rather it's like another layer on top of that. But you could be saying they could be the bad the resentfuls.
For example.
Um, we're gonna steal the election and we don't think you'll fight, but that's also it's not just that, Bob with his shotgun. That is also almost like we don't think the military will. But by kind of using the Trump, I don't know, that 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 fire gathering missiles where you just use that to map out everything. It might be at a point where I think 8 years ago, if Trump had rolled in with like the military on day one, the average person, myself included, and you'd be coming at it from I think your heart would be in a pure place. You'd go, that's a dictator. And I don't, Now, objectively, you wouldn't be right because if he's fighting the mob state, but no, you would go, no, 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 you can't do that.
Right.
I think now we're at a point though that the when the resentfuls, if they steal this election, they go, we don't think you'll fight. That's also more so at like, we don't think a governor or a contingent of
Correct.
generals will rise
Or
up and roll,
sheriffs
will
or
roll
district
on, yeah, or
attorneys or
whatever.
judges.
We don't think that there's some group of, whoever they're gonna roll up and, with a armored division and go into DC. I think 8 years ago, no, you couldn't. I think people would say this is a fucking dictatorship, and they would tell the resentfuls to bomb them. Now, if it happened, and if the steel is so in your face, you might have the, not of everyone. I don't think we're even there yet, but I think you might have the passive approval of a large percentage of people that would be like, yeah, you're probably only fixing that with the military. People that 8 years ago, like myself, who would have said that's a dictatorship. If I saw a military rolling in DC now, I might kind of be like, yeah, they probably deserve it, and there's probably no other way to do it. I don't know. I'm 34. I have a biology degree. What the fuck do I know?
Yeah.
But just as an observer,
I don't think we, so give me a second.
yeah, no, you're good.
I agree completely with what you're saying. I don't think we're quite there
I don't
yet.
think, no, 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 I don't know.
Um, One of two things needs to happen for us to finally get there. One, they need to blatantly steal it. Um, and that needs to be caught out in the open, cried out in the open, and then they become more and more tyrannical as they entrench themselves to stay
As
in
they dig
power,
in, it'll make it'll make the 2020 inauguration look like it.
right?
They're gonna want,
Or
yeah,
or they allow the election to happen as it naturally would, and then they
plot and
unleash,
struck.
the
New
violence in the
pandemic, shoot a
streets and the
missile at Moscow.
cartels and the,
Yeah.
and they lock the ports down, which is what that whole longshoreman thing, that was a threat.
Yeah.
Um, and they use all of their means to resistance, right? But really revolution to prevent the peaceful transition of power and peaceful exercise of power, to prevent um, the regime that comes into power from fixing a lot of these problems. And the first one, they hold it, they take it, they steal it, and you're gonna have to fight us to take it back. We get to a hot civil war faster that way. On the other side, where they, well, this is just all resistance. This is all, um, the disaffect, the whole wokest message of the disaffected and the victimized and you're Nazis and yada yada. That takes longer to go to civil war, a hot civil war. I mean, it goes all but half a step from hot civil war because you'll have violence in the streets and you'll have BLM rioting again and you'll have burning cities and you'll have all of that. But it's not a hot civil war until somebody goes too far somewhere in some state, something happens. Um, the Spanish Civil War is probably the best example of how that all started with the Republicans and, quote unquote Republicans and the monarchists, etc. Um, the way this mob mind works, though, and you can see it in mobsters, etc., and things go back, is they're always the victim. They're always the one. You're right. That's how you warp reality. It's the female way. It's the estrogen way. That's what most of these mobs. They're all there's tough guys, etc. Yeah, they're fucking. You get them one on one, they're fucking pussies,
They're all soy boys. Yeah.
right? Um, Not all. There are some badass guys there too. I'm not
Sure.
taking away. You got your one percenters, but
Sure.
um, uh, that mind, that mob mind, that female power mind is a victimhood mind. I mean, it plays out everywhere. I don't know how if they step aside and give up power, and this is what they're, these conversations are being had right now. If they step aside and give up power and then go, like a divorce where the man finally says, that's it, I can't do anymore. We're gonna have a divorce. Um, she plays the victim for a while, and then she goes on, and then she gets her attorneys and she gets some friends in the network to support her and maybe some financial support from somebody, and she goes to war with the man to destroy him and his family, right? Or him and him personally, and take his family from him, his kids and his wealth and all of it. Um, that is another possibility. Does that go to does it go to hot civil unrest? Yes. Does it go to hot civil war? I don't know. I don't know exactly how it would, because in order for that to go to hot civil war, you'd have to be able to convince enough of the military, enough of law enforcement, probably the cartels, etc., that they need to go into bloody warfare for you and themselves because it's the right thing to do. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean to be the good thing to do, but it's the right thing to do to keep the whole thing going. Or, you put the face on it, you're oppressed, etc. But so I don't know how the mob state's going to react here. It is a feminine mind. It is a passive aggressive, very violent, very destructive, passive aggressive mind. I could see them, because there are these conversations being had, to deny the election, prevent a peaceful transition of power, and sit in this position and say, yeah, you're gonna have to take me down with a gun. Literally, you're gonna have to remove me from this position of power with a gun. Um, and not just a gun, but shooting people and killing people, right, to get to me. I can see them do that because the concern on their part, on the mob state's part, is if they give up power at all, if they allow this regime to come in now after they've become so obvious in who and what they are, that they're done.
They have to steal it. They have
What's
now back.
that?
They have to steal it because they have now after stealing 2020 so blatantly. And I,
Yes.
I do believe that the responsibles probably have evidence of that. So now it's not
Yes.
just some bland statement of, oh, every election's stolen. That's different from saying like everybody speeds versus the cop saying, Mr. Kerrigan, you just sped. That's a lot different than like everybody drives drunk. It's like I don't give a
Yes.
fuck about I'm talking to you right now.
Yes.
Everyone steals elections. They're going, well, here on the night of November 3rd, 2011. I remember like right before Trump left office, it was like 2020. He gave a speech. I just remember using the White House. It was Christmas decorations. And I remember he started reading things about, and it was for the first time he had stopped saying that the election was stolen and the fraud. He was saying it was really weird. I haven't found the video of it, but I remember watching it live. Him being at like at 1:12 a.m. in Rapid City, 414,608 votes came in, and I was looking. I'm like, that's not talking shit. That's somebody at the NSA handing you something.
Correct.
So, not to go down the whole, but so I think
Yeah.
that there's the receipts somewhere,
Yes.
and they're going now, and the receipts aren't enough to tell the mob you're out because if they're out, here are the receipts. You're going to treason, execution.
Yeah, but you have to have the people behind you. You
You get
gotta
and
have
that
the people.
which you would
Yeah.
only, but I think by the fact that they are now at the point where they're showing the receipts for it says, again, I don't shoot the missile unless my buddies are in the nuclear bombers
Yeah.
already. I think that all implies that they're already that the
Yeah.
responsibles have the power. So they're showing the receipts, and the mob state knows that the responsibles have the receipts. So they now don't have a choice. They have to steal it now. And if I'm no tactician, but I would imagine if you now know that they have to steal it because no matter what, they're fucked. I would then what's the Sun Tzu? Give your enemy a golden bridge to retreat across. I would
Hmm.
say almost make it so obvious that they can don't roll in with the National Guard at the voting stations because now they're going to be such a cornered animal. They're going to set off a nuke in Manhattan or something. Block off every other metaphorical and literal exit and go make them steal it. Everyone's watching. 2020, 2022. Everyone is watching.
and make it
Elon
obvious. Yeah.
Elon owns Twitter. Make them steal it. You are now, again, I don't think I've ever played chess in my life, but I would imagine you are now forced to essentially end the game, even though you know you're going to die. Don't let them flip the table, which is why I'd also imagine that you don't, they're not doing all this stuff if at some point they didn't take control of the nuclear triad, the responsibles, because what you don't want them to do is go fuck it, they know it's stolen. Again, they are a victim mind, they are not good people. They're going to go fuck it, fire the nukes, fuck this whole planet.
Okay. 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 So
That's what I
very
would
good.
imagine.
I think the responsibles are already in control of the nukes.
That's what I mean is no, the responsibles wouldn't do
Already
all this.
done.
The responsibles wouldn't do this if they
Right.
didn't
I
already have
think
them.
they're already, I think that's what's been, so very good.
Probably like what Space Force is or something, or it's a tri or
Maybe that's
whatever
people
the
are going to say that. I
triad
don't know
and
enough. I
yeah,
can't
no,
speak to
exactly.
it
I
because
don't.
I don't know enough about it.
But in they have the triad because you don't want the resentfuls to flip the table. You want them to have to lose.
So by doing what's been happening the last 4 years of elucidating all of this stuff, drawing them all out, taking the hits, Trump spent tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions, on legal expenses and all of that, right? And he's not the only one. There's all kinds of other lawsuits out there from the lawfare. But by continuing to stay with the system, the process, the Constitution, the court system, it's demonstrated that the responsibles are not the ones that will ever flip the table. Right? We're not going to flip the table. If somebody's going to flip this table gets flipped, it's not us. Right? So I agree with you. I believe very firmly, although there's now here's the other thing we got to take in mind. We have no idea because we're not seeing it how many negotiations are happening behind the scenes for people to just walk away. The resentfuls or people that have been brought in. So it's not resentfuls. You'll never change a resentful. But there are adoptables that have been brought into the resentfuls camps. And some of those you can get to. And a lot of those are in all of these bureaucratic positions.
Turn over all the evidence, and you won't be.
And don't
Yeah.
do your job.
Oh, don't
Leave,
turn states.
retire, walk away, or do your job in accordance with your oath and the Constitution, and you'll be okay. We will forgive, right? So
Gotcha.
I'll give you an example of this. The German government is still paying the pensions of Nazis, not because Germans are Nazis, and Stasi, not because the Germans are naturally oriented towards the Stasi. No, it was because in order for a peaceful transition of power and a peaceful continuation of power, these people needed to know, we'll pay your pension, you'll live a comfortable life, but you have nothing to do with politics, nothing to do with power, nothing to do with influence ever again. You're out. You are retired.
The exit pack. It's the exit.
And if you go against that and we find that out, which we will because we keep very close attention to you, you lose your pension.
Yeah.
You lose that comfortable life. The Germans worked this out and it's worked well. There's with the Nazis and the Stasi. The Russians have done this with the Soviets. They didn't go hunt the Soviets down. Some, right? They made this deal. If you had earned your pension and your retirement, as long as you don't fucking ever try to make us Soviet again, you keep that. And the couple of oligarchs that tried to ended up in prison lost everything. So we don't know because we can't see it, but I guarantee you, because this is how power works, there are thousands upon thousands upon thousands of key conversations being had, some with union leaders, some with sheriffs, some with boss, people that have influence over a group that, yes, you've participated in this mob regime and we're going to move. As long as you as long as you uphold your oath and the Constitution, we're not going to move against you moving forward now and moving forward. And those people that are egregious, bring the receipts, you're out. You're out. We'll take care of your pension. We'll take care, right? You don't, because we don't want them coming back as an insurgency, right? By the way, we do this, special operations guys and CIA, we do this all over the world.
First, within a week of 9/11, the first thing we did when we sent over ground branch was just send over cash.
Cash.
The quickest fuck the bombs here.
Yeah. You're going to have a comfortable life, but you're out.
Yeah.
You're out. Right. So that's happening all over the place at every level too. And then what happens is those supports get taken away from the resentfuls in positions of power, and that does drive them to a place, right? Because you're going to have a Nuremberg, like not Nuremberg, but I mean, you're going to have people are going to have big, powerful people are going to have to go down. They're going to have to go down, or the whole regime is done. The whole structured system is done because people will never trust it again. And so you're right. They're going to have to steal it openly, blatantly, and outright. And then say, okay, you're going to have to fight me to physically fight me to take us out of here.
Now, the people at the very apex of the resentfuls, they're not stupid. So, to us, it seems like that's the logical thing. Make it, cut off the nuclear triad, make them flip the table or try to flip the table. But they're not stupid. So, I mean, do they have a cunning move? Do they go, well, what would they not be expecting? Let Trump win.
Yeah, no. Okay, so very good point. So the issue is that the apex resentfuls are nobody that we know by name.
Of course not.
So the problem is that they will and have been, that's how the WEF and the globalist system failed. They walked away. They realized, okay, that's it. We can't go any further with this. The problem is that all the people they put into positions of power, they ain't even fucking anywhere near as intelligent as they are. And sometimes, in many cases, just idiots. They don't have that intelligence. They don't know. And they are sitting in these positions with regulatory approvals and authorities. And they will fight to the last man. And probably because 60% of them are true believers.
Yeah. I would imagine if you had a war game it or you're just feeding it into, I don't know, some Gary Kasparov AI fucking Bobby Fischer chess machine, you probably go, we have an ideal outcome. And then what we really do is the ideal outcome is that in which I guess the fewest number of people die.
Yeah.
And ideally, you have it end with, a Delta Force raid and a handful of shots. But on the other end, you have the resentfuls nuking the planet. The real outcome will be somewhere on the spectrum in between of 3 deaths and 3 billion deaths. So they're probably playing it out to go, well, you still want there. There is no perfect outcome. There is the civilians will die. They're probably just going, how do we get that number as low as possible?
Deloitte and Touche did a report about 2 years ago, and basically they said 2 billion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not 2 billion. They didn't say it directly that way, but
yeah,
that's basically what they said.
So you'd imagine they probably want to get it as low as possible. So then you have to wonder, like, well, then what is that timeline? Do they let them steal the 2020 or 2024 election, and they make them steal it, and
well, that's the other option. That's the other option. The other option is you let them steal it, and then you further allow them to show how bad they really are.
There's also that where you just keep going. You want to keep the thing.
And you further build your alliances. You further erode their supports from them. You
further solidify your own
their narrative, right? Because Clausewitz, and I'm terribly sorry, I'm going to have to go here pretty soon.
No, you're good. You're going for 3 hours. We'll wrap it up.
Clausewitz articulated that you and others that you don't ever defeat an enemy A war is never won unless you kill every last man, woman, and child and destroy every trace of their language and culture. Because it's all a narrative. A people, a culture, a civilization, a regime, a mob family, it's a narrative. And you have to completely and totally and absolutely wipe out that narrative in all of its forms for it to be truly gone and not rise again. This gets back to the Romans and the 3, 5, and 7 generations. How do you wipe out a narrative? You kill 7 generations and every member for 7 generations of that family till that narrative doesn't exist anymore.
Yes, I mean, so they let them steal it, and then they just, yeah, like you said, and then as more time goes on, they'll get more and more radical, but you'll just be eroding away from more and more. I think it was Thomas Powers, secretary to Curtis LeMay, said, he's like, I'm the second most powerful man in the Air Force. And he's like in a bunker. And he goes, without this phone though, I have nothing. He's like, I have a couple pencils and a notebook. Maybe I can hit you with that. But it's the phone that makes him I can launch a nuclear strike anywhere. Take away my phone and I don't know, I could maybe stab you with this. Like it's much you're much less of a threat. But imagine you want to get it to where the resentfuls who we don't know about, you want it down to where their only power projection is how far they can throw their water bottle at you.
The
You want to,
problem with that is you can wind up with a Stalin, and that effort to go that path can take 80 years,
yeah, that's the other thing. So I would
4
imagine if,
generations, and it can kill tens of millions and hundreds of millions of your own people,
which is why I would
including you,
imagine, why I imagine there'd be a war game to say, let it go to this, but don't let it start doing X. So
and
it's
then
either,
stand.
yeah.
Yeah, and
So
then
there's,
stand.
it's like a moving grid. It's like a cross
Yeah,
square on a grid.
yeah.
It's like you want it like right there.
So we've been trying this slow, steady thing for 40 years, no, since 92, 91, 92. So we're half the way into almost half the way into an 80-year slow path. The problem is we can't wait for that because their own claim statements, is to uh,
Depopulation.
reset the carbon cycle
Yeah,
and
no,
reduce the
it's
population. And they mean that. That's not hyperbole on their part,
no. So
right?
which would mean that there is now a point where it's like,
We
all
have
right,
to
yeah.
act hard. So then we don't know how this plays out. We'll have to carry this conversation
Sure,
on
yeah, yeah,
again. I
yeah.
gotta
No,
I gotta run.
no, you're
But
good. We'll
hey, I
wrap it
will be
up.
putting up today, tomorrow, Sunday, 3 more pieces for the mob state up on Twitter.
Perfect.
Today's one that I meant to put up this morning is going to be demonstrating that, oh, by the way, women are involved. This ain't just the man thing. This ain't just the men behaving like men. Oh, hell no. Women are deeply
Yeah.
involved in all this as well. So,
We'll do another one. And yeah, I think the kind of final point would be get close to God. It's get close to God because it's all about the end, or get close to God because you're gonna live a long life. But that's the only place where the eternal war ends, is this
well,
world will always
I would say I would agree with you, but
maybe not
I
end.
don't use the God so much. I would say learn to walk with the divine every moment of your life and realize that other human beings are that reflection of the divine. That's
Yes.
what that old created in the image of God really meant. Humans are in human form, we are that representation of the divine. In order for us to walk with the divine, to walk with God, we have to walk with one another
Love
in
you.
our own
Love
communities,
each other as I have loved you.
right? We have to walk with one. That's the thing. Go local, go small, go back to your communities. We've got to be community oriented again. It's the
Yeah.
only way we get through this, whether we go into the fight, a bloody fight, or we go into the long drawn out, they slowly bleed off the resentfuls, which is what happened in China. It's what happened under Mao. It's what happened in Russia under Stalin. That was that slow, steady elucidating, illuminating, letting it burn itself out. Well, what did that entail? Total and absolute destruction of everything, murder of tens of millions and hundreds of millions of their own citizens.
Mm.
Let us hope we don't go down that path.
Yeah.
I just hope that we're still Scandinavian enough to fucking fight.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
All
Yeah.
right, man. I gotta
Yeah,
run.
bro. We'll wrap it up, dude.
All right,
Thank you so much
brother.
for coming on, guys. Go in the description, find a link to your YouTube, find a link to your Twitter, and we'll pick it up another time. All right, dude. Thank you
Perfect.
so much
Yeah.
for your time.